across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very, very good morning to you. Welcome to the show. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. You knew that bit already. Mike's been on after all. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, it's great to have your company. Lots to talk about today. Obviously, we're going to do the entire show on Keir Starmer's big speech starting at 2 o'clock today. No, of course we're not. It's going to be utterly inconsequential on the beginning of, I don't know, phase 4,221. I don't know what phase we're in. None of them have worked. None of them will work. But we'll all carry on trying to define his legacy and his mission and what he's going to do in his government. But anyway, that will be coming up briefly. But luckily, he's not on air. He's not on the stage in Labour's conference while I'm on air, so we can get rid of most of that. But great to have your company, as I say. And if you miss any of the show, don't forget you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. You can hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up, though, we will definitely be talking about the Prime Minister's speech and his plan to rebuild Britain, but it won't be cost-free. Prime Minister will talk about a hard road ahead, laying the ground, of course, for more tax rises and spending restraints in the November budget. But let's face it, mostly tax rises. Also, we're going to be talking rather a lot about Donald Trump and Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu agreeing a peace plan in Gaza. Well, for Gaza. Let's hope it actually comes off, because it's been welcomed by Middle Eastern leaders, even by those white flag-waving European leaders, including our own. But under the 20-point plan, Israel would end the war in return for Hamas laying down arms and releasing all their hostages, dead and alive, within 72 hours, in exchange for hundreds of detained Gazans. Gaza would then be run by an international board headed by no less than Donald Trump and, guess who? Former British Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair. If Hamas refuse the deal, and they're said to be considering it right now, Trump will back Israel in what he says finishing the job of destroying Hamas. But it is interesting just how quiet the pro-Palestinian lot are today. You'd think they'd be cheering on a peace deal to save the people they claim to care so much about. But they're strangely quiet. We'll talk about that. Plus, JK Rowling, the Boudica. Let's face it, Boadicea, as we knew her at my school. Boudica, JK Rowling, has basically launched the most blistering, wonderful attack on actress Emma Watson. I have to say actress Emma Watson, because otherwise who the hell is she? She accused her of pouring petrol on the flames when JK Rowling was suffering death threats and rape threats over basically standing up for women's rights versus trans rights. The author rounded on Watson and the other former absolute nobody child stars of the Harry Potter films who disagreed with her criticism of trans ideology, claiming they were ignorant and adding that, unlike them, she wasn't a multi-millionaire at 14. Boom. We'll come to that a little bit later in the show. Lots to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on everything we're talking about and in between. If you want to talk about Keir Starmer's speech to conference, I mean, good luck with that if you can find any substance to have an opinion on, but I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this Middle East peace deal. Donald Trump running Gaza with the help of Tony Blair as part of this US president plan for eternal peace in the Middle East. He doesn't like to underplay these things, does our Donald? I want to know your reaction to that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs $1 standard network rate message. Well, let's talk about this first of all with my guest joining me throughout the show all the way till 1 o'clock, editor of Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Yeah, we are going to start with international affairs. Shall I play a quick clip of this press conference yesterday? Because let's face it, most people aren't sitting there just watching or listening to non-stop 24-hour news. They've actually, lives, jobs, kids to pick up from school, supermarket shops, that sort of thing. But this was the press conference that Donald Trump gave alongside Benjamin Netanyahu after we found out that Netanyahu had, let's face it, I'm sure he didn't want to, been forced to make a phone call to the Emir of Qatar to apologise for bombing terrorist leaders in his country. Not a phone call I would have been willing to make, but it was the prelude to something very big, the 20-point plan. Here is what Donald Trump had to say in typical understatement.
This is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. And most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East. And let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East.
I as I say, really not underplaying that. And here's what Benjamin Netanyahu had to say about the plan.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
I mean, what's not to like? And yet Tom Slater, I say that the pro-Palestinian crowd, remarkably quiet today about it. Talk us through what this plan actually is.
So there is this roadmap to end the war via this 20-point plan, and the key part of it for certainly the hostages' families in Israel was the fact that within 72 hours you would have the release of the remaining hostages dead or
all
alive.
of them, none of this drip-drab, one at a time.
Exactly.
Nonsense.
Then you've got the question of Hamas, which Benjamin Netanyahu was touching on there. Essentially, it should have no role in the future governance of Gaza under this plan, but somewhat confusingly, those who are willing to lay down arms and commit to peace can carry on unencumbered, but anyone who
With
wants to flee, exactly, under an amnesty, there will then be this essentially kind of transitional authority that will sort of have a kind of technocratic government by Palestinians, but also kind of outside experts, so-called, who will be shepherding the fledgling territory into its next
among
sort of
those
phase.
experts,
It's Tony Blair. If you're talking about eternal peace in the Middle East, he's probably not the person you would go to.
Wonder, yes.
But nevertheless, he would be, again, one of the people who would be presiding over this transitional arrangement to a kind of future settlement.
Well,
So
the solution is probably digital ID cards.
Absolutely.
If only Gaza had had digital ID cards
None of
all
this would have
time.
ever happened.
Yeah,
no.
I'm just saying.
So we look forward to Tony
Sorry, I
Blair's
shouldn't make
stewardship.
light of this.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
You know, people are dying. By the way, on both sides.
No, absolutely.
But-
And that's the question as well, is that you can have a press conference and announce a peace plan. Obviously, the Israelis have buy-in now. Various of the Arab states have said that they are taking it in good faith. Even Hamas are pretending to take it in good faith. But whether or not this actually survives contact with a very difficult reality on the ground is what we
The difference here is this plan, you know, there's been lots of different plans, lots of different hostage deals and things like that on the cards with Qatar getting involved. Key thing here is Qatar have had a little bit of a wake-up call that, oh, by the way, you're no longer able to just operate with impunity harbouring terrorists. Ain't going to work for you anymore. You know, Emir of Qatar, I don't know how safe he feels these days, given the reach of Israeli forces. You know, they've been protected all this time. Now, you know, of course, Donald Trump got his plane from Qatar, so he wants nicey. So that phone call Netanyahu made, I think, was very, very much a part of this. We're told that the Qataris, you know, along with, you know, we've got the Saudis, the UAE, and others, Egyptians are all on board, and they're going to be supporting this plan. But I think what's crucial about this is if Hamas don't want to sign up, fine. OK, you don't want to sign up, but now we've established who wants peace and who doesn't want peace. By the way, this is something that would have been obvious to anyone paying attention at any point in the last almost 2 years. But OK, you don't want peace, fine. Well, we're just going to carry on then. And Donald Trump, who's the only person who really matters in the West in terms of the financing and the political support for Israel, basically says, I'll give you free rein, you know, finish the job, and therefore Netanyahu can carry on. Now, this is going to be very, very popular in Israel. Friend and foe alike of Netanyahu in Israel are being very supportive of this plan. If it does come off, surely this is a win for the Palestinian people. I mean, we're looking at, you know, we're told that they are under the cosh of Hamas, and of course they don't like them. Well, great, then they're free of Hamas. Tick, what's not to like? There's going to be a massive reconstruction programme, billions to be pouring in from other Arab states. I mean, and they're not forced to leave the land, crucially. If they do leave, they'll be able to come back. I mean, tick, what's not to like? And OK, the idea that you're going to have this sort of British protectorate, you know, international protectorate, ring like, you know, Tony Blair back involved in, like, well, yeah, but that's because if it's not Hamas, and we can't have elections because you've got to elect Hamas, and it can't be the Palestinian Authority because that's run by Fatah, and if they had an election, it would be run by Hamas. That's not going to work. I mean, this is a great deal for the Palestinian people. If you genuinely believe that the Palestinian people are innocents who are currently facing mass starvation, currently facing genocide, all of these three things, by the way, provably untrue, and that they are under the cosh of Hamas. What's not to like about this deal, other than a sliver of territory around the Gazan border, which they lose to a buffer zone? And by the way, having been within a kilometre of the Gazan border, does not seem to me to be remotely unreasonable, given what happened on October the 7th.
And it's one of those things where this deal, whether they're be specific parts of it that we could quibble or argue about. It does kind of call various people's bluff, doesn't it? In relation to Hamas, obviously, who, as I say, are claiming to be listening thoughtfully to this proposal, but this is an organisation which is committed itself to essentially a kind of never-ending jihad against Israel. Do you really think that they're going to say, you know what, we've had our fun, we've done as much as we can, it's now time to get round the negotiating table? Doesn't really stretch. And also, I suppose it does leave open the question, because the kind of medium term, the future of Gaza is very much conceived, as you say, as this kind of protectorate, as this sort of thing that's going to be presided over by a quite technocratic government. It reminds you of the question of, in terms of a longer term piece, that also probably requires something to happen within Palestinian civil society for leadership to emerge who are willing to put to bed this dangerous fantasy that you're going to destroy the state of Israel. And it's not entirely clear that any of those figures exist, which is precisely why the arrangements they're talking about are as technocratic and, as you say, colonial as they sound.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, it's 725 days since those hostages were taken. I mean, that's, I would say, having been in Israel recently, the #1 priority is getting the hostages back. It is the awaking obsession of every person in Israel. Everyone knows someone who was impacted by what happened on October the 7th. So, I mean, it is fascinating. I'd love to hear your thoughts, whether or not you think this is a good plan, whether this plan will work, crucially. What role Tony Blair can have in this arrangement. I mean, look, he is a player, you know. I think he may overestimate his ability at being the man behind the deal, as does Donald Trump. His idea of the art of the deal. I mean, he's not managed to do Putin, Kim Jong-un, and that. He doesn't actually seem to be that good at those things. I don't think he's really that good at doing property deals either, to be honest with you. Evidence in terms of his finances over the years. But, you know, I think there are a lot of people right now who, because it's Donald Trump, because it's Netanyahu, absolutely not interested. And because actually bringing about the end of the war and helping the reconstruction of Gaza for Palestinian people without being led by terrorist fanatic lunatics isn't actually what they want. It's not actually what they're concerned about. What they actually want is the destruction of Israel, destruction of the West, and they think that Netanyahu and Israel and Donald Trump as combined as one are just the evil axis, and they actually don't give two hoots about the innocent civilians of Palestine. I had some silly bin on my tube on the way to work this morning who sort of, tapped on me to say, "You should be ashamed of yourself," she said, straight out of Central Casting. "You should be ashamed of yourself of supporting Israel." I'm like, well, you should be ashamed of yourself supporting Hamas terrorists. Sod off. Do one. I mean, it's just like, give me a break, love.
They're not interested in peace, are they?
But well done, because when you got to the canteen carrying your Guardian under the arm, you were able to tell everyone how incredibly stunning and brave you were with that awful woman from the radio. I mean, pathetic, utterly pathetic. She wanted to have a conversation with me about it. I would have had a conversation, but she waited until she was about to get off, because then she got to say her piece. I mean, these people are deluded. I said, "You're not happy about the peace plan, then?" And she just left.
She probably wasn't aware of it, to be honest with you.
You make a fair point. So I want to hear your thoughts on this. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000, text 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Let's also talk about Keir Starmer's speech, because I suppose contractually we probably have to.
I've barely been able to sleep with the anticipation, so.
Was it Tony? Keir Starmer's speech eve last night.
But if you can't sleep, Starmer's speech is also a good solution to that. So we look forward to this afternoon. Here's my call in. Call in and tell me what he's going to say in his speech, so I don't have to bother pretending to care. 0244 499 1000. Do your job. Don't just sit there passively listening or watching us on YouTube. Please save me from having to read the notes I've got again about what this godforsaken empty vessel of a pointless man who's Bramongin Brill Cream is going to say on the stage today in Liverpool. Here we go. I'm going to try and get through it. I'm going to read this version from one of the telly newspapers. So Keir Starmer will today announce a major overhaul of the NHS, promising an online hospital. You bored yet? Wake up! Wake up! Wake up, everybody. Promising an online hospital that will deliver millions of extra appointments and help cut long waiting times, as he outlines his vision for a fairer Britain. It will launch in 2027, 2 years away. Can I just say, we're a first world country. It's the 21st century. I mean, we've been booking restaurants online. We've been booking, holidays online, taxi service online
finally we're going to be able to see a hospital consultant online in anywhere in the country rather than someone who happens to be attached to our local hospital or happen to attach to our local GP. I mean, well done us.
It's very Keir Starmer though, isn't it? If you think about a country roiled by questions of immigration, you've got an economy which is still in the doldrums, you've got soaring public debt, and his answer to this is a new and improved version of the NHS app. It's him all over, really, isn't it? I mean, this complete empty vessel has no idea what he's doing.
It's Hancock-esque.
Absolutely. It's just, a few gimmicks. I mean, it's amazing how quickly this government has got to this point, but it's as if they've been in power for 10 years and are completely out of ideas. They're at the kind of Cohen's hotline period of their governance, if anyone remembers the tail end of John Major years when he was having to implement policies like that. That's where we've ended up, but after just over a year.
Yeah, it blows my mind how bad they are. Well, he's also going to deliver hard truths to the party faithful. He's going to say that beating reform... By the way, Nigel Farage totally lives rent-free in Keir Starmer's head, doesn't he? They said beating reform will require decisions that are not cost-free or easy, decisions that will not always be comfortable for our party. He'd tell what the Sun are calling squeamish lefties in the Labour Party to get on board with uncomfortable and necessary decisions on migration, spending and welfare cuts. Well, they've already kowtowed to Labour backbenchers on welfare cuts. They didn't go through. Spending, I mean, here's another few $100 million to the public sector unions. I mean, he's also going to say there's nothing compassionate or progressive about letting illegal migrants cross the channel. Apparently he's staking his political life on bringing an end to the small boats crisis. Well, then... I can absolutely assure you then your political life is over. Meanwhile, Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, she likened the marchers who went on the Unite the Kingdom march organised by Tommy Robinson. And I know people who've never been on a march in their lives who went on that march, who said the atmosphere was just lovely. And as I keep pointing it out because I was really shocked when I saw some of the speakers and some of the things they said. Some of them were good people, some of them were absolutely hideous. But she says, while not everyone chanted racist slogans, some did. Clear that in their view of this country, I have no place here. And she likened some of those marchers to the P bashers of the 60s and 70s, the Dares to the skinheads and P bashers of old. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think they've got this wrong. I understand that they want to make clear that they're not on the side of Tommy Robinson or some of the people who were addressing that march, who I think even some of the people who were there probably were slightly mystified by or certainly didn't agree with. But at the same time, it's quite clear that you do not get 150,000 people on the street if they're all
There's probably a lot more
Front.
than that as well.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where I can understand why they want to denounce the elements within that movement who are quite clearly...
But don't we all?
Exactly, and I think everyone does anyway. I think it kind of goes without saying, but needing to recognise that the reason that you are seeing so much unrest in the country, whether it's protests outside hotels, whether it's people showing up to a demonstration in pretty unprecedented numbers for that kind of politics, it's not because there is runaway racism in the country, it's because people of all backgrounds, actually. That's
well,
one
again,
thing
there were lots of people, blacks, Asian
Mm-hmm.
people who were on those marches. You said, there was very friendly atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the idea this was some white supremacist march is an absolute load of nonsense. It just wasn't.
Exactly. And that's not to let off scot-free, again, the people who led that march, who have, to put it lightly, a very checkered history. But you've got to recognise the mood of the country. And I think trying to place this in the frame as if it was exactly how it was, 50 years ago, it's just not accurate, and also I think risks alienating the very people that they want.
And
to
again, we're constantly this thing where like, no, it's not racist to say, oh, it is racist to say. There's just constantly in the middle of that, we're going to become an island of strangers. No, I didn't read the speech, I didn't mean that. Well, I sort of did do it. I mean, they don't know what they think about it because fundamentally they're at a North London dinner party. And they're just going, oh, well, I am a bit concerned about immigration. Oh, but not really, because I don't have a problem with brown people. No, really, but you do. And I mean, they are, I know these people. I've met these people. I've gone to bloody dinner parties with these people. They are so uncomfortable in their own skins. They don't know what they think. And again, we were talking on the show a lot yesterday, this whole sort of, Nigel Farage being, and reform policies being racist. I mean, we've had some front benchers blatantly talking about Nigel Farage being racist. Seriously, Nigel Farage, get the libel lawyers out because you would absolutely win this one. It's absolutely outrageous people should go around saying that about you. I know for a fact he's not. I really do. But they throw around these words and they don't realise that they're just, that word, I mean, this was far right, bigger, racist, doesn't even have any meaning anymore because they've taken away the meaning of that. And by the way, Reform's policy on deportations doesn't even mention colour. There's no mention of race. It's utterly irrelevant to this debate. It's about numbers and it's about culture. So it's got sod all to do with that at all. One other thing that we're going to be hearing about today a lot is after Rachel Reeves' speech, basically preparing everyone for the worst, you know, this harsh global climate. That's what they said last time round. And yes, we've got the Donald Trump tariffs. I get that. That's been difficult. But, you know, we're not all working for steel exporting companies, are we? So let's stop the pretense of that. But basically planning not to raise the VAT rate, which is what they promised. They were very careful with their words, weren't they? But extending VAT to other things, including private healthcare. We're told that's going to hit 8 million people. It's part of that whole, you know, VAT on school fees and VAT on healthcare. I mean, I've got private healthcare, you know, through the company. I haven't had it for many, many years, but I mean, I know people who live in, you know, working class backgrounds, who live in bungalows, who use their savings to spend hundreds of pounds on getting an MRI scan. They would have to wait months to get some, you know, to find out what a problem was. And, you know, I know lots of people who have used private healthcare who are not, by any stretch of the imagination, anywhere you can say rich or even average earners, who have done what they have to do for their family member. Often family members contributing to the cost for private treatment because they simply can't face a wait on the NHS. I mean, I'm not quite sure that their class warfare on this issue is going to win many people over. No,
and it's also obviously not going to solve the economic problem. I mean, you have...
Like that on school fees.
Exactly. I mean, this government...
Drop in the ocean.
The reason they keep having to kind of shift around their policies and potentially, in this case, seriously kind of roll back on some of the pledges they made ahead of the last election is because of the fact that they're constantly chasing this black hole, which, you know, obviously balloons in size in relation to external events. And so they end up doing things which are politically quite toxic or just quite mean-spirited or something which, at the very least, is not going to endear them to a certain section of the electorate. And then either having to U-turn on it again or, you know, just sit back and express horror at the fact that actually it's barely touched the sides in terms of the economic picture. They're kind of constantly having to do things which make them look bad, but at the same time don't actually fix the fundamental problem because they don't have a plan for growth. They don't have a plan.
There's no plan for
sorting
growth.
out the
There's
public
no plan
finances.
for cutting. No plan for cutting the debt. No plan for cutting the spending. And actually, the only way you could actually really boost tax receipts would be to tax billions and millions of ordinary working people, because there are more of them by a long way than there are billionaires, and the billionaires will leave if you do it. It's going to be a great day at Labour Party conference, I think we can safely say. Coming up, we are going to be taking your calls. We're going to be taking some of your messages. We're also going to be talking about that plan to run Gaza. What role will Tony Blair have? And we'll be talking about JK Rowling delivering a much-needed message of honesty and truth to that little... Egypt. I really, really don't like her. I didn't like her before she became someone who basically said, wasn't it a good thing for teenage girls to have their breasts cut off because they were a little bit confused about their sexuality. Really got a problem with Emma Watson. I think JK Rowling has been far too nice. Well, the gloves are off now. We'll talk about that coming up as well. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense.
so fed up and so bored of hearing left-wingers and Labour Party conference types wanging on about tolerance. I'm not feeling at all tolerant, and neither is most of the country. We're fed up of being tolerant. We're fed up of having our tolerance exploited, abused, totally and utterly misused. This fetishization of tolerance.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. So welcome with your thoughts on everything we're talking about today. 0344 499 1000. You want to talk about JK Rowling giving an absolute little lesson to young Emma Watson about life, the universe and everything. Donald Trump basically saying, well, you know, Hamas is going to get a lesson if they don't agree to his peace plan. And what is the lesson of Tony Blair coming back possibly as involved in the running of a post-Hamas Gaza? And of course, Keir Starmer's speech, which is just going to be Keir Starmer speaking and therefore utterly pointless and devoid of all real content that has any meaning for any of our lives. I think I may have nailed it there. But your thoughts in particular on Donald Trump running Gaza with the help of Tony Blair as part of his plan for what he calls, underplaying it, eternal peace in the Middle East. What's your reaction to that? James says Tony Blair's just got to be in the limelight, doesn't he? He can't help himself. You'd think he's rich enough now, wouldn't you? Just go away, sit on an island, buy a super yacht and just have a nice time. Brian says, I'm a little upset that Trump is working with Blair, to be honest. I thought Trump was better than that. Frank says, people were worried that Bibi was the Antichrist, but here we go. The real devil doesn't half love an entrance. I shouldn't laugh, but the audacity of Blair knows no bounds. This is just another example of Blair being Emperor Palpatine, pulling at the strings of Darth Vader. Oh, wow, okay. There you go. Martin says, sounds creepy. Invoking the concept of eternity sounds supernatural. And anyway, what? No role for Alistair Campbell? And the coalition of war criminals is winning, says Nigel. I do wonder what other Middle Eastern leaders think of it. That said, a lot of them were very, very happy to get rid of Saddam Hussein. So there we are. Let's go to the phone lines. Alan's on the line in Salford. Alan, what do you make of this Trump peace plan?
Good morning, Julia. Yes, I'm very pleased. I watched it. It takes a strong man to make a peace plan like this, and I'm afraid Trump is the top strong man. He's very good. Everything's right. Get rid of Hamas. I'm not sure that Hamas will accept this because the Arab nations did not like ISIS or Taliban, or and probably don't like Hamas.
No,
so
they definitely don't. They definitely want to be rid of them.
Yeah, but I don't know what the Arab nations are going to do with them. You know, that's tough.
Well, that's it. Essentially, free passage. Any Hamas fighter can have an amnesty, lay down his weapons, and he can have free passage out of the country. I just don't know who wants them.
Yeah, which countries they're going to go to. But, yeah, what a great plan, really. Because the Palestinians, they've had 4 chances at statehood. They've refused. They've been the poor persons of the world, if you listen to them, for years. And actually, they're the first ones that made terrorism viable, weren't they? You know, with the PLO. So let's not forget that. But really, it's a great chance for the country, you know, for him to get themselves a government that's a democratic government.
Well, the thing is, if it was a democratic government, they would vote in Hamas. It won't be a democratic government first, but the plan is, I think, long term, that is the case. We shall wait and see. Alan, thank you very much indeed for that. Let's quickly go to Grace, who's in London. Grace, what do you make of the Trump peace plan?
I really hope that it works, but I don't have much faith that it will. I mean, speaking of supernatural things and everlasting peace, I often think that Trump is trying to play up to some of his...
I mean, that's just Trump overstatement about, you know, the bigly. You know, everything's bigger than better, isn't it?
Well, I mean, he said if he got peace in Ukraine, then he would go to heaven. But that's not theologically what Christianity
But
actually
he
says.
doesn't even believe in God, so I mean...
No, I know, and I think that there are some people who try to claim that they're on God's side as an excuse for just being egotistical and power hungry, which is quite contrary to what Jesus actually said.
You think this is just about Donald Trump's ego? But I mean, my thing is, of course Donald Trump's got an ego. I don't think anybody who runs for the most powerful person in the world hasn't got an ego. But here's the thing, even if it's his ego, if he's able to actually bring about an end to this war, get the hostages home, get rid of terrorists running this part of the world, I mean, who cares who cares what the motivation is?
I would absolutely agree. If he can succeed, irrespective of his motivation, then that would be awesome. I worry that unfortunately there are still some people on both sides who really feel that all of the land should be theirs, and whether they are Hamas or Netanyahu, they will claim that they have some divine right to this, which is, again...
Well, no, I mean, Israel hasn't claimed a divine right. They walked away from it in 2005, so, I mean, Netanyahu's accepted this deal already.
I would want to try to make some distinction between Netanyahu and maybe the rest of Israel, because I think there are some people who are more level-headed than he is. But I just can't see this conflict ending based on what Donald Trump has put together, because he comes out with nonsense all the time.
We shall wait and see, The Middle Eastern leaders have accepted it. Only people waiting on now is the Hamas leadership, what's left of them in Qatar. We'll wait and see. Thank you very much indeed for your call, Grace. Coming up in just a few moments, very quick break, we're going to be talking to Middle East expert Andrew Fox to make of what he thinks of it. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:36 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online with me. We'll find out what he has to say about what my next guest has to say. Love to hear your thoughts as well. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Andrew Fox. He's a research fellow at the Henry Jackson Society. He's also ex-military man himself, a defence and Middle East expert, and someone who has spent quite a lot of time in recent months, not just in Israel, but also in Gaza as well. Andrew Fox, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Julia. Good to see you.
Well, I wonder what we should talk about today, Of course, the Trump peace plan. He says it's going to bring eternal peace in the Middle East. He says potentially one of the greatest days ever in civilization. Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, in the White House yesterday at that joint press conference, agreeing to this 20-point peace plan. Now we're waiting on Hamas, who the BBC report are examining it in, quote, good faith, close quotes. First of all, what do you make of the peace plan? And second of all, do you think Hamas will accept it?
So it's got some good bits and some bits we can be a little bit more sceptical about.
Which bits are which?
Yeah, so I mean, the bottom line is that the hostages come home, and if that comes off, then that is the best possible outcome as far as Israel is concerned. It also means they can end this long, slow bleed in Gaza and, start to heal their society from the traumas of 24 months of war. And it gives the Palestinians a chance to do the same. Whether Hamas will seize the deal, I don't know. I suspect Qatar will give them very clear instructions that if they don't, they'll be hoyed out of Doha and be told to found a new home.
Do you think that's part of that phone call? So in return for Netanyahu making that phone call to the Emir of Qatar, basically apologising for those strikes which killed some of the Hamas leadership in Qatar, that basically that's part of the deal. But in return, Qatar, wakey, you can't keep these terrorists, you can't play the middleman anymore and keep these terrorists on your soil.
Yeah, exactly that. I think we're seeing a lot of theatre going on over the last 24 hours. I suspect a lot of what's being discussed is already agreed. I would be very surprised if Mr. Netanyahu didn't know the terms of the deal before he landed in Washington.
Yeah.
The UN General Assembly last week was a great opportunity to get everyone together, get the Arabs on board, get Egypt on board, and this is the kind of end stage now. I suspect that perhaps even the deal has been done with Hamas already, if it comes good. But the downside is it doesn't really deal with the issue of Palestinianism, which is the river to the sea, remove the state of Israel, replace with something else. There's an articulated pathway to peace in the deal where, if they behave themselves and jump through the hoops, they reach a position of statehood in due course. That's where the tricky part comes in, because obviously the West Bank is a whole different kettle of fish. Yeah. And you can remove Hamas from Gaza, but you still have 2 million people there who hate Israel and want to see it destroyed.
Yeah. And that's the key thing, isn't it? This is not, as lots of people like to play it, sort of 2 million innocent people wandering around who suddenly had this terrorist group imposed on them in a war they wanted nothing of. Mass support, very clear mass support within Gaza for what happened on October the 7th. Many civilians taking part in the second and third waves of people crossing over the border to carry out rape and mutilation and murder and to take hostages. I mean, we've really got to be honest about that. The radicalisation of society in Gaza is so shocking, and that's one of the reasons why, let's face it, Egypt hasn't opened its borders. None of the other Arab states want these people. They could easily, take them if they chose into their populations, but they don't want to. We know that the other Middle Eastern, big power blocks, the Egyptians, the Saudis, the United Arab Emirates, and others, they are on board with this and have been signed up to this. We know they want Hamas out of the way. What do you make of this idea of this sort of protectorate, effectively, ruled by this technocratic board of peace, led by Donald Trump? You think he might have other things to do at home. So Tony Blair, of all people, involved. How would that go down, particularly in the Middle East, given his history with the Iraq War?
I think he actually carries far more credit in the Middle East, Blair, than you would expect. He's played it very well. So I guess we're going to see new Gaza.
Things can only get better. Things can only get fatter. I don't know.
Oh, I like that. Very good. But look, I don't think Hamas are necessarily going anywhere. All they have to do is drop their weapons, say they're good, and they get this amnesty. They can leave if they want to, but the idea of Hamas, they're a Muslim Brotherhood organisation. They play the long game. They think in decades, and they'll know they've only got really 3 years to wait out until there's somebody else in the White House. And if it's a Democrat, they're in a great place, because 8% support for Israel among Democrats at the moment, 6% if you drop to the youth age groups. And there's every chance that they could then leverage that at the UN Security Council and so on and so forth. So if I'm Hamas right now, I'm handing in my weapons. I'm claiming that I'm standing down. I'll send a few people to take one for the team and emigrate. And then I'm just going to wait, bide my time, reload, and then try and seize control of Gaza through whatever means I can.
That's the question. Why people say, well, would Hamas agree to this? I mean, there is a loss of a bit of territory in the buffer zone, and Gaza is not very big, so that's a loss of territory. There is the idea of this sort of the trust they'd have to give, where they would release the hostages, all 20 alive and 28 believed dead, in return for afterwards getting back a load of, some convicted murderers, convicted terrorists, and also some detainees. About 1,000 plus. There's an element of trust there, but there's also an element where, what's not to like if you're Hamas? I mean, surely lay down your arms, say you won't, no longer part of Hamas. Reconstruction, all the money comes in. Just bide your time, and then change your name to another organisation and run for election if and when there are democratic elections as part of a Palestinian state. Bob's your uncle, you're back in power. I mean, I can't work out what isn't a great deal for Hamas here.
Yeah, and exactly that. And if we look back to Basra in 2003, 4 and 5, that's exactly what happened with the Brits. It went very quiet after we seized Basra. And we found lots of lovely people to work with who then got elected and turned out to be the Islamic slates that then ran the militias that drove us out of Basra. So there's a bit of a pattern here in the Middle East that's quite an easy one to slip into, I suspect. So that's where that's going to go. I can say with relative certainty.
Is there an element to this? This is like a cunning wheeze by Trump and Netanyahu. Yes, Trump would love to be the architect of peace, but I mean, genuinely, Obama got nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize within a few weeks of him becoming to power. He hadn't done anything, for goodness sake, before he was nominated for one. Realistically, if Donald Trump was able to bang heads together enough and bring this to peace and sort this out, this long-running, decades-long war, he would absolutely deserve a Nobel Peace Prize, would he not? But is this not about him and his ego and getting a Nobel Peace Prize? Is it in his legacy? Is it actually more a way of saying, look, I can either get that, on the other side, Hamas don't toe the line with this. As he said, he will let, with impunity, effectively, Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli government, the IDF forces, finish the job. His words, finish the job, and basically, seize Gaza City and completely destroy Hamas. I mean, let's face it, this is an easier option for Netanyahu, even with some dissent on the right wing of his government. But nevertheless, this is win-win for both Trump and Netanyahu, isn't it?
Well, I don't think so, because finishing the job, what does that even look like? How do you bomb an ideology out of existence? It doesn't happen. And if we look at the...
We tried to do that. We did it with Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. We tried to do that with ISIS. Why does the West keep thinking they can do that?
Well, in Afghanistan, it was quite the opposite of trying to bomb them out of power. We were trying to nation build in a place that wasn't a nation. So that Afghan was a slightly different one.
The aim of the Afghan war was to oust the Taliban, who had harboured Al-Qaeda terrorists. That was the initial aim of the war.
It was, but it swiftly turned into something else, as I can testify from personal first-hand experience.
There, yeah.
But if you look at ISIS, what happened is they fled into Africa, and now they're still a significant force in the Sahel and Western Africa.
And we'll be dealing with that next, is my guess. Yeah.
Potentially, but there are these ideologies that tend to mutate and move around and shift and move between countries and don't see barriers like national borders as a thing. So terrorism itself is very difficult to get a handle on.
If you had to put money on it in the next few days, will Hamas agree to this or not? And will we see the release of the hostages, if that is within the agreement, within 72 hours? Look, next Tuesday is the second anniversary, October the 7th. That would, be absolutely, a game changer for people in Israel who have spent, 2 years demanding every day bring them home, wearing their yellow ribbons and talking about their plight. We're talking about people who are being starved and tortured right now in tunnels. Do you think Hamas would accept the deal or not, if you had to put money on it?
I'd lean sort of 51% yes, because I think Qatar is going to has been well briefed and is going to give them the good news. There are still members in Hamas leadership who are fully on the death cult side of things.
Yeah.
Obviously not for them, because they're living in 7-star hotels in Doha, but they're firmly in support of everyone dying for their jihad in Gaza. It's whether those voices can be suppressed sufficiently to get the deal over the line is going to make the difference.
It's going to be absolutely fascinating to watch. Andrew Fox, always appreciate your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, what do you make of that? 51% hope for that?
No, exactly. When it comes to this particular conflict, nothing is ever for certain. Talk of eternal peace certainly seems pretty outlandish. And I think that's why when you look at these things, it's often what are the kind of most immediate outcomes we will see. And you can understand why this plan is being so well received in Israel, because it would secure the hostages being returned home. That's always been the kind of tension at the heart of this war, is that you have those two primary war aims: bring the hostages home, but also end Hamas as a viable proposition in Gaza. It seems like at the very least...
Well, as a threat to Israel.
Absolutely. At the very least, you'll get the first... This deal will certainly deliver the first one. The second one is the big question mark hanging over it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. 0344 499 1000. If you're one of those pro-Palestinians, you think that the lives of people in Gaza is absolutely your number one thing, and you fly your Palestinian flag, why are you so quiet today? Isn't this what you want? I'd love to hear from you. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000. Up next, we're going to be talking about JK Rowling taking the gloves off and taking the fight to Emma Watson. Guess who's winning that battle? That's up next. This is Talk.
And so bored of hearing left-wingers and Labour Party conference types wanging on about tolerance. I'm not feeling at all tolerant, and neither is most of the country. We're fed up of being tolerant. We're fed up of having our tolerance exploited, abused, totally and utterly misused. This fetishization of tolerance.
Like the people that did in Epping, you're called far rights. But if you defend Epstein, guess what? They make you an ambassador to the USA. I mean, you laugh, it's comical.
That's a good point.
And they get offended if we want to make rules.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 10:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk about JK Rowling in a war of words with Emma Watson. Oh dear. Little Emma Watson, Hermione Granger, of course, star of the Harry Potter films, and a few other ones since then. But, you know, she got tens of millions of pounds in the bank from a very young age, thanks to the person who wrote the Harry Potter books, JK Rowling, and yet she turned on her very quickly and, yeah, let's face it, pretty viciously at a time when JK Rowling was simply standing up for, well, women like Emma Watson's rights. Well, finally, JK Rowling decided yesterday to hit back, and in an epic post on X. The author claimed that Emma Watson had participated in the trashing of women's rights, and that perhaps she understood more about the needs of women and girls who live normal lives and their need for things like, you know, safe spaces in toilets and changing rooms and prisons and hospitals and women's refuges, because she said, unlike them, she wasn't a multi-millionaire at 14. Well, let's talk about this war of words with Fiona McNenna. She's Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Good morning to you, Fiona.
Good morning, Julia.
I love it when I see these epic responses that JK Rowling does from time to time. And you just sort of settle in, get a nice cup of cocoa, just settle in. Perhaps a bit foolish for Emma Watson to start a war of words with someone who's so good with her words as JK Rowling. But tell us what sparked this. When did the original sort of battle start, and what was it that made JK Rowling hit back finally yesterday?
This has been going on for, 5 years almost now. So from quite early on, you know, the popular sort of Hollywood thing to do, the showbiz celebrity thing to do is to be all protect trans kids and all that stuff. Well, we all want to protect unhappy children. The question is, you know, how? That's where we disagree. Yeah. But the big spark for all of this was in 2022, when Emma made that statement. I think it was 22, might have been 23. Emma made that statement at an awards where she said, I'm here for all the witches. And then it's disputed what she then muttered, but people think she said bar one. And
but bearing in mind that the women who stood up for women's rights versus men who claim to be women's rights are often called witches online, including JK Rowling.
Yes, and so you'll remember there was an interview series that an American journalist did called The Witch Trials of JK Rowling. And at that point, she was asked, would she comment on Emma Watson, having effectively sort of distanced herself from her, stood for the, you know, I'm here for all the trans people and all that. And Rowling declined to do so. So this is now the dam has broken. She's finally had enough. Yeah. And it's interesting that what tipped her over the edge wasn't more bile from Watson. It was this pathetic little attempt at reconciliation, the kind of, I love her and I hope she still loves me. And it's not convincing anyone.
And a private note sent a while back, just as a private note, even though, of course, she's had her mobile number and could have sent her a WhatsApp at any time, you know, basically, oh, you know, I'm sorry you're having to go through all this. And this is the thing, because you know, JK Rowling, like a lot of women, like you and many others at Sex Matters, have had to endure the most disgusting foul abuse, death threats, rape threats. JK Rowling had to have 24-hour security for herself and her family because of the threats against her, simply for saying that women's rights mattered. Never said anything. I mean, literally never said anything anti-trans people, never said a single transphobic thing in her life on Twitter or in any interview. And yet the hatred that she's had, she stood firm on it and has been, I'd say, remarkable. I mean, classy throughout on this. And it's interesting that when these actors and actresses who've mostly not had glittering careers since they've starred in the Harry Potter films, been paid tens and tens of millions of pounds. I think Emma Watson worth 70 million quid, pretty much entirely being plucked from obscurity by JK Rowling, who had the absolute say over the casting as one of the key characters. That the ingratitude they showed, they didn't just stay silent. OK, fair enough, life's difficult, some people are weak, stay silent. They decided to sort of, you know, join in the bun fight against someone who was defending women's rights. And I just think it's unforgivable what they did, and particularly what she did as a young woman.
And she's 35, remember? Yeah. So, you know, she's been in her 30s since this all kicked off. And as you say, she went out of her way to trash JK Rowling, to distance herself from her. But I think what's
Give the money back, Emma. If you're that horrified, give the money back. But these are the young actors. They didn't want JK Rowling involved in any sort of reunions or anything like that, as if she was sort of, they wanted to unperson her. I mean, well, if you feel that angry about it, give the money back.
Yeah. Well, I think what's kind of sickening too, and we all feel it, is the people who sidle up to you and say, you know, I won't say anything, but I do agree. And I understand some people are in a position where they can't risk their livelihood or won't, and I respect that. That's clearly not the case with the multi-millionaire Emma Watson. And in her case, as you point out, Julia, she went much further. She made such strong noises to say, I'm nothing to do with that old witch. Yeah. But she's finding now that it's not good enough. nothing that you do is enough. And the mere fact that she's even expressed some positive emotion for JK Rowling means that over on not on X but on Blue Sky, which is supposed to be the nice place, I gather they're writing really nasty things about her for daring to endorse the witch.
Well, maybe JK Rowling might send her a nice note, privately as well. But I mean, this is the thing; it's never going to be good enough. And again, she wasn't saying about like I don't want people to be transphobic to trans people and expressing a view. She said she made it personal about JK, wanted everyone to know about it. But also, she was talking about again trans kids. No such thing as a trans kid. She was someone who supported puberty blockers and basically, under 18s, adult, girls having their breasts removed. I'm sorry. That's so unforgivable. If you're on the side of the people who are surgically, mutilating children, you ain't on the good side.
Yeah, she was completely endorsing medical transition of children, the Mermaids charity that is all for that, when historically...
Run by a woman who took her 6-year-old son abroad to remove his penis
and everyone knew that if you just waited, that most children would grow out of their distress. Puberty is the cure for thinking you're in the wrong body, because puberty is what shows you certainly are not. Yeah. And many of them are gay if they're let grow up properly. And so if you don't let them grow up, it's kind of homophobic. It's kind of, conversion.
It is. I mean, you are much more forgiving of Emma Watson, and there are these people who say, look, I can't speak out. There's a part of me that says, I mean, I know when people like Graham Linehan speak out and then they found themselves cancelled. I understand that, but I think it's been safe for a little while now. But again, the people who don't speak out, you're part of the problem. If you're not part of the solution, you are part of the problem.
Yeah, if we could get everyone who agrees that it's wrong to mess with children's puberty and it's wrong to tell people they can change sex, if we could get everyone to agree with that,
or to take women's safe spaces,
that would be almost everyone.
Yeah.
So we would be safe. And the only thing that is stopping that is the fear of cancellation. So over time, more people will speak out. But the majority opinion is absolutely with us. And the way to protect these children, these so-called trans children, is to be honest and caring and supportive and tell them things will get better and they will grow up fine.
Absolutely. Fiona McInerney, thank you so much. You've been brave throughout, a lot braver than the Emma Watsons of the world, Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Tom Slater, what do you make of this battle, this war of words?
Oh, it's been going on for so long, hasn't it? It's not just Emma Watson, it's also Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint to a lesser extent.
I've forgotten all their names.
You do just think, you ungrateful little toe rags. Aside from the politics of it,
give the money back. If you're that horrified by her, give the money back. Give it all to charity.
They were, none of them were going to be winning Oscars before they were put in that film series. They owe that woman a hell of a lot. At the very least, you don't slag her off in public.
Absolutely. It is just extraordinary. They really are. Emma Watson, I'm afraid you lose in this battle, love. Good luck. And good luck with the next one. This is Talk We Are, the Home of Common Sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning, welcome back to the show. It's heading towards 3 minutes past 11 o'clock. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Emma Watson, look away now. Listening on DAB Plus radio or on your smart speaker, you're very, very welcome. If you're watching on YouTube or your connected device, you are also very welcome. Thank you very much for joining us. Lots to talk about. If you do miss anything on the show, you can go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show, hit subscribe, and you never have to miss a thing. Unless you want to miss a thing. I suppose that's an option. Then don't. But anyway, coming up in this hour, plenty more to talk about this peace deal to end wars forever. Eternal peace in the Middle East. That's what Donald Trump has said as he announced that peace deal with the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. It's a peace plan for Gaza, welcomed also by Middle Eastern leaders. And we're told that Hamas is looking at it in good faith, because, you know, the way terrorists do. Under the 20-point plan, Israel would end the war in return for Hamas laying down arms, releasing all their hostages within 72 hours. And that's in exchange for hundreds of detained Gazans being sent to Gaza. Gaza would then be run by an international board headed by no less than the US President, and would also include former British Prime Minister Sir Tony Blair. If Hamas refuse the deal, Trump will back Israel in what he says is finishing the job of destroying Hamas. Well, on the same day as all this is happening, far more important things happening. It will have a massive impact on your and my daily lives. Yes, Keir Starmer is going to be sort of, relaunching his latest message to try and get us to understand what his mission is as our Prime Minister. He's making a keynote speech, Labour Party conference in Liverpool at 2 o'clock. So set your alarms to have a quiet nap then or watch it. Pretty much the same thing, same impact is my guess. But he's going to say he's got a plan to rebuild Britain, but it won't be cost-free. Prime Minister will talk about a hard road ahead, laying the ground for tax rises and spending restraint in the November budget. But let's face it, mostly tax rises, likely to include increase on adding VAT to private health fees. We're going to be talking about that, and also a cunning plan to basically have a more digital NHS, so you can book appointments with consultants on the other side of the country digitally. I mean, it is the 21st century. Why are we not already able to do that? By the way, it's going to take 2 years to set up. Seriously, that's how we run things in this country. It's interesting that his speech comes after the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood has likened some of the Unite the Kingdom marchers to the P-bashers of the 60s and 70s. The Home Secretary said that some of those who took to the streets in the rally recently organised by Tommy Robinson were heirs to the skinheads and P-bashers of old. Is that true? And Keir Starmer, as I said, is going to be doing that big keynote speech. We're going to be talking about that with numerous guests, and they include Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, who joins us in the studio right now. A very, very good morning once again to you. We just had a bit of fun talking about JK Rowling and Emma Watson, and that's a battle, a war of words. There's certainly still an ongoing war of words going on between Tony Blair and most of his cabinet and Nigel Farage, and we will get to that in just a moment, because it is quite extraordinary how there's more mention of reform at the Labour Party conference, it seems to me, than there is at the Reform Party conference that we had recently. But I think an awful lot of eyes on what's going on in the Middle East, this war in Gaza, and Donald Trump and President Netanyahu announcing this 20-point plan. Apparently the 21 points originally mentioned, that one point was this apology call to Qatar, which Netanyahu had already done at this point. Tony Blair having a role in this sort of post-Gaza protectorate board of peace headed by Donald Trump in return for Hamas laying down their weapons, return of the hostages within 72 hours, some huge number, as always, 1,000 plus of people held in Israel, Palestinians held in Israel being released, a little bit of land going to a buffer zone, but basically IDF troops out in a short period, and having this sort of international body run and reconstruct Gaza. Gazans not forced to leave, that was what Trump had originally talked about, but if they do choose to leave, they will have a right of return. I can't see anything that's a downside for Hamas here, other than they lose the leverage of the hostages, and that they've been told they are ousted. But don't they have a route back, just by, let's face it, calling themselves something else and coming back and getting elected in years to come?
Well, quite. I mean, there's a sort of willful naivety built into this plan, which is that there's going to be this amnesty for Hamas fighters who just lay down their weapons, the idea that just by command that they should have no place in the kind of future of Gaza going forward doesn't mean that they're not going to try to assert that. That's one thing when you're dealing with these jihadists, lunatics, is that there is a tendency to treat them as sort of honest brokers in the same way that any other group might have been previously.
You want this and I want that, let's come to a deal where we get most of it, but they're not. Because also, that's not how they think.
No, absolutely, and Hamas is a good example, because also Hamas are not really interested in a Palestinian state. They want Palestine to be the Palestinian wing of an Islamic caliphate. They are
the destruction of Israel, every Jew dead,
absolutely,
and then spreading the caliphate not just throughout
exactly.
Gaza and the West Bank, the whole of the Middle East, and by the way, Europe too.
Yeah, and as Andrew Fox was pointing out to you a short while ago, they are essentially just the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood. This is a broader Islamist, terroristic ideology. These are people who do not just have a kind of set of demands, and if those are met, then they'll happily come round the table and chalk up the win. So maybe there's more to this that we're not quite appreciating yet, and also maybe there is a certain point where even jihadist lunatics' self-interest kicks in. They think if we don't go along with this, we're just going to get again an even more off the reins response from the Israeli government. So who knows? But there is, whenever you're dealing with these Islamist groups, there is a tendency to not believe them when they say that they want to destroy Israel and the West.
That's their aim. And again, I think what's also very interesting is those people who say, people who marched every 2 weeks in the centre of London, and all those people who wave their Palestinian flags and berate me on the tube. Hi, love. Thanks for chatting to me this morning. I'm a terrible person who should be ashamed for supporting Israel. Sweetheart, I'll never be ashamed supporting the only democratic state in the Middle East. Call me old-fashioned. But it is extraordinary how quiet those people are when they're being offered on a plate exactly what they say they want. Peace in Gaza, IDF troops out. Of course, they're quite happy to want the hostages. The hostages don't get much momentum from them, but yes, hostages being returned. All these people who've been detained without trial in Israel, they'll be coming back too. By the way, that's what all wartime governments do. We did it, we would do it in the next war. That's how life works in wartime. But they're getting everything. They're getting everything that they say they want. OK, not a democratic state. If you think you want a democratic state in Gaza or part of Palestine with Gaza and the West Bank, you are talking about the Hamas terrorists being in charge. No Israeli government of any political hue. You could put Jeremy Corbyn in charge of that one, and even he wouldn't agree to that. I mean, he'd like to. No. Even he would know he would be out of power straight away because Israel would no longer exist at that point. So it's not going to happen. But let's have another little listen to what was said at that press conference yesterday, because as always, Donald Trump, who would be the chair of basically this board of peace, he doesn't like to underplay these things. So this is what he had to say.
This is a big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. And most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East. And let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East.
I mean, why not just add in eternal along with this big day and with the greatest days ever in civilization? President Netanyahu, standing next to him, was a little bit more dealing with facts, is what he had to say.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
Now, would it ensure if Hamas agreed to it that Gaza would never again pose a threat to Israel? Because we're talking about this sort of protectorate, this sort of technocrat government for a period of time. Yeah. And then they're talking about reform within the Palestinian Authority, currently run by Fatah, but actually mass support now, according to polling in the West Bank, is that actually Hamas would win any election. Can they guarantee that Gaza would never again pose a threat to Israel based on these 20 points as we've read them?
Almost certainly not. I mean, it's how you go forward from here, because as you say, the unfortunate truth in all of this is that whilst this technocratic setup where it's kind of going to be presided over by Palestinians, but also kind of external experts, Tony Blair lurking in the background as he always tends to, that's a concession and an admission of the fact that if you did have an election in Gaza tomorrow, you're very likely to have a Hamas landslide, even absent the repression that they're meting out. Obviously, the Palestinian Authority are being talked up as the Palestinians that we can do business with, and yet the reason that Mahmoud Abbas is 20 years into a 5-year term now is because he knows that he would be turfed out in favour of Hamas or something.
And bearing
like
in mind,
it.
Again, people often talk about the moderate Palestinians. If he's moderate, I mean, seriously.
No, I mean, he literally has a PhD in Holocaust denial, and they obviously continue to pay the families of terrorists who have murdered Israelis.
Not under the table, not under the counter. It's over
open secret.
I think she got ministry that did it.
Absolutely, open secret is over sugary. So it's one of those things where that just needs to be recognised, and it's the sort of thing where there's the Hamas question: how do you deal with them immediately? How do you make sure that they do down arms, that they are not a military threat, even if they might continue to be a kind of ideological presence, if you like. The broader question is, when are we going to see, or how might we see, the sufficient kind of sea change within Palestinian politics, civil society, a new layer of leadership emerge which says, you know what, this holy war with Israel nonsense is, if nothing else, going to lead to just more death and destruction on our side. We need a new path. In the absence of that, it's not obvious.
No, and it's very interesting that Arab leaders from the Middle East, whether it's Saudis, whether it's UAE, whether it's like Qatar and Egypt, they're on board. They're on board with this. So we shall see. I want to hear from you on this. Well, always get in touch on any of the topics we're talking about. But what do you make of this plan for eternal peace in the Middle East involving Tony Blair? And we were joking earlier about, given his role in the Iraq War, which so many people are still so angry about. Whether he was credible as a figure there, but actually he is considered a power broker, he is considered a player, and of course he was, the sort of, was it not the EU's, but like the Gang of Four. It was like the Big Four's emissary on peace in the Middle East. He knows his stuff, that's for sure. But what's your reaction? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000, text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate, text cost £1, standard network rate message. Let's also talk about the Prime Minister here, Keir Starmer. I don't think we are talking about a big, beautiful day, and I don't think we are talking about eternal peace. It will feel eternal when he's speaking. He's going to do a speech. Can I see one more bit of video footage or photograph of him with his wife? His wife's apparently got this job in the NHS. Do you know what? You know what the NHS is really doing? What they really need is people to be at work doing their job. I mean, she does something to do with occupational therapy. I'm not entirely sure what that actually involves. I think that involves more paperwork than actually seeing patients in any way. But but why are you taking your week off? I don't understand this bring your wife to work thing. I don't get it. I don't understand why politicians need to do that. But she's there all week. It's not like she's just turning up, for just sort of one photo call to come and kiss him and go, oh, I love you on the stage when he finishes today. I mean, it's just, can we just grow up as a country and not do this? It's ridiculous. But anyway, get that out of my system. He's going to do this speech. He's going to be talking about this virtual hospital service. I mean, whoopity-doo-dah. Sensible, good idea, all in favour, but take 2 years. And we'll talk about that in more detail in the next 20 minutes or so. But he's also going to tell, basically, those on the left in the Labour Party, we're going to have to get tough on migrants and on welfare spending. And, we're just going to have to, we're going to have also get touched on all this. He goes, the decisions that are not cost-free or easy, decisions that will not always be comfortable for our party. That's an important message. The key thing is, can anyone really believe him, given that he's already backed down twice on 2 welfare issues? He's not done anything really to tackle both. His policy on illegal migration totally failed. Legal migration, Shabana Mahmood, his Home Secretary, is just doing a sort of a bit part version of what Nigel Farage announced a couple of weeks ago, but after saying that his policy is racist.
And also, I think people just don't trust them to deliver on this. They could be making the right noises, which they are trying to do at the very least, but it's partly a credibility problem because, as you say, whether it's the small boats, they're trumpeting this one in, one out plan, which isn't even really one in, one out. That's a lot harder to land.
We've got 6 out.
Just about, yeah. Maybe it's a few more crept back. Who knows? It's one of those things where they just don't have any credibility because they have 50,000 come across the border during their short time in power so far. And also, the reason people are particularly distrustful of this is if someone is to genuinely get a handle on whether it's legal migration, mass legal migration, it's going to take a tremendous amount of political will. You've not only got to deal with the human rights issue on the illegal migration side, on the legal migration side, you've got to basically rewire an entire economy which has been hooked on cheap imported labour. And there's whole sections of the public sector which are overly reliant on it. There's big questions there that need to be addressed. Do people really think that the party who are addressing this because they've been forced to, who are addressing this because Morgan McSweeney's focus groups have instructed them that it's necessary to stay in power, no one believes they will be able to grasp those nettles. And so therefore, even if the government was more popular, had more of a hearing in the country, we know that's not the case. Keir Starmer is the most disliked Prime Minister since records began.
I mean, just not even 15 months in. I mean,
what
that's
an achievement.
I know, well played. But that's the thing, there's no will to do this, to tackle any of these things. I mean, whether it's welfare, whether it's immigration, legal or illegal, or any of that. There's no will to do any of that. But there's also no belief that there is a way as well, because the abject lack of competence in every area. I consider their inability to even competently do their own PR to be shocking. I mean, I genuinely, I mean, keep going, the chief of staff, they had a director of strategy who were forced to resign last week. I think the biggest surprise that there was a director of strategy.
No, exactly.
And they obviously were working from home an awful lot and probably taking sick days for anxiety. I mean, I've covered a lot of governments over my years. I've been around far too long. And I have never known. I mean, John Major's government looks like, you know, the peak of perfection and ability compared to this lot. They're an absolute shower. I mean, it's really quite shocking. So the idea that if you can't even manage a bit of basic PR, right? How on earth are you going to manage to turn around the country and all the problems it's got? And if you've already shown that you are completely and utterly beholden to your backbenchers, whether it's about, you know, recognising a Palestinian state, whether it's about backing down on winter fuel payments, well, that was the right move to back down on, but then backing down on, they're likely to back down on the two-child benefit cap, which would be insane. They've already backed down on the most pathetic, weaselly, pointless £5 billion of their welfare reforms. They yapped on this week. We've had this nonsense about how they're going to take on, you know, youth unemployment. 1 in 8 young people doing absolutely sod all day. Absolutely outrageous. And actually, it's probably more than that, realistically. And is growing. And it turns out, actually, this big policy to get these people back to work, well, it won't include the kids who claim they've got anxiety. I mean, so you're not going to tackle the problem then. I mean, it's just... They're just. I mean, Keir Starmer is an empty vessel. We know that.
And he's in a particular bind because the things that he would need to do to both put the country back on the right track, and also to get on the right side of voters would mean that he can no longer be leader of the Labour Party. So it's one of those things where doing what is both right and democratically supported is something which is flatly rejected.
Going to get him out. But isn't that the problem with the supposed threat from Andy Burnham, the Mayor of Manchester, who seems to sort of be backtracking? A lot of people said he might have gone too early. But he's basically saying the solution is borrowing a load more money, 40 billion to build council house, you know, and going faster. They've renationalised everything, although that's quite a popular policy in the centre ground as well. But basically spend more, you know, and basically move to the left, tax the rich more, because they'll all sod off, you get less tax in, you have to tax everyone else more. His offering is very much to the left of what Keir Starmer is currently offering. And they think that's the solution. In fact, the country is to the right of where Keir Starmer is. And he doesn't get it. I mean, he thinks they're far right. They're not. The country, you, me, you know, people, we're centrists. We're centrists in this country now. The view that, you know, we should deport people who haven't got a right to be here, and we shouldn't be paying, you know, billions to people who are perfectly able to work, to not work the whole of their lives, put people in prison who commit crimes. I mean, none of this stuff is contentious among normal people. No, absolutely. And the way in which Labour carry on, they seem to think that essentially the readership of the Guardian newspaper is reflective of the country. They continue to go down that road. Because they're the only people they know.
And it's that thing where, obviously, they look at the focus groups, they're told where public opinion is on certain issues, they are aware of this, but I think they just still struggle to properly digest it. They're still, that's the Andy Burnham versus Keir Starmer thing was such an internal discussion. This would make a bit more sense if Labour were out of power, in opposition, having a kind of navel-gazing. You're running the country, there's all these issues going on, and yet you're kind of basically just having arguments that only really make sense or would appeal to someone on the soft left of the Labour Party. It just feels so delusional. That
I think the
engaging
problem
in this
is
at
they've
this
been
point.
out of power so long. They're protest groups like the Liberal Democrats. You know, are you a Tuesday night book club or are you a party of power? You have to be serious. You know, and that is one of the issues I think Reform is going to face as well. There's a lot of like trying to be all things to all men on a lot of issues, and actually they're going to have to get more serious as we get close to the point where they could actually be in power. Then that's going to be a big issue. So much to talk about. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Do get in touch at 0344 499 1000. Also to be talked to in the last half hour about JK Rowling taking on Emma Watson finally. I mean, but just with such class. Some of us weren't multimillionaires at the age of 14 and actually understand what real women's lives are like. Fair point, love. If you want to get in touch on that, love to hear your thoughts as well. Do get in touch on 0344 499 1000. We'll get to your messages, we'll get to your calls up next. This is Talk.
To enter this country.
We're not accusing individual politicians or even that whole party of being racist, but we're saying that policy, that approach is as we said, immoral, racist, unworkable. What's important here is people want practical, fair, but firm solutions. And I think British people have a real sense of fairness, and people want to see a policy that works, that's fair, and that takes tough action to make things change. And that's exactly what we're setting out. So we're not pulling our punches. We're saying, look, if you want to come in this country, if you want to have indefinite leave to remain, you have to speak English. You have to have contributed. No criminal record, no claiming benefits. You know, all of that should be the baseline.
I am so fed up and so bored of hearing left-wingers and Labour Party conference types wanging on about tolerance. I'm not feeling at all tolerant, and neither is most of the country. We're fed up of being tolerant. We're fed up of having our tolerance exploited, abused, totally and utterly misused. This fetishization of tolerance.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 11:26. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk. Let's get to your messages and your calls coming in thick and fast on Trump's peace deal. Eternal peace in the Middle East, one of the greatest days ever in civilization. I mean, he's not bigging it up too much, but what do you make of his plan, in particular Tony Blair's role? And do you think Hamas will accept this deal? Well, Isla says, yeah, because Blair is trustworthy. I'm not sure this is a smart move by Trump. Neil says, sorry, is it just me? But I thought Blair hated Trump. Oh, I don't know if there's if there's a job and a Nobel Peace Prize and a bit of money in it, I'm sure Tony Blair will do anything. Yasmin says, I thought the Labour government declared the state of Palestine. Is Tony Blair going against his own party? Doesn't really add up. Well, this is a precursor to a state of Palestine, surely, Yasmin. And Simon says, will that mean he will leave the rest of us alone? And Michael echoes that, saying, excellent, keeps him away from interfering in the UK. And as I pointed out, he'll probably think the solution to war in the Middle East is digital ID cards. If only everyone building the tunnels, held in the tunnels, not allowed in the tunnels when there is bombing, had a digital ID card, everything would be fine. That is how Tony Blair thinks, and it works. Anyway, let's talk about this with you. George is on the line. He's called up on 0344 499 1000. He's in Wimbledon. George, good morning to you. What do you want to say?
Hello, sorry for sounding sleepy. I'm jet lagged. So,
I just assumed you just had a pre-run of Keir Starmer's speech, and you just was recovering.
No, well, no, I've had 2 Nitol, but I'm going to watch the speech because I think that will do the job and get me off. So anyway, you and I have spoken before. My husband's Lebanese, he's a Christian.
I remember.
And let me tell you now, I'll bet 100 quid on it. They won't take it. The 20 points don't mention the West Bank, don't mention 1967 borders, they don't mention the right to return, and every single time in the past.
They do. No, 20 points does include you can leave, Gazans can leave, but they won't be forced to leave, and they have a right to return.
Yeah. As in a right to return to their homes from 1940.
Oh, no, fair enough, yes.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
You can't return to Israel.
100 years ago, I was completely against Israel. I'd been to the West Bank on a charity job when I lived in the Middle East. And I've been to Nablus in the north. And I'd seen documents of people who owned houses in what they viewed as Palestine back then. So I get that position. Since this 7th of October, I've done a complete about turn. I am so pro-Israel. I have no faith in Hamas or indeed the Palestinian people. I argue about this with my husband and his friends, both Christian and Muslims. They hate Israel more than they hate even Hamas. I'll tell you that.
Yep, there's your problem.
That is the problem, and it's the whole region. I'm telling you now. They won't accept anything that isn't 1967 borders and a right to return.
Yeah, which ain't going to happen. Because, by the way, the Jews don't have the right, from Israel, don't have the right to return to all the Middle Eastern states that they were expelled from either,
Exactly, and I've done a bit of research this morning to see what the impact would be on going back to 1967 borders. You're talking about a couple of 100,000 people in settlements outside of those borders. You're talking about giving control of, I think, the east of Jerusalem to the Palestinians.
Yeah. It's not going to. It's just not going to happen. There's no way any Israeli prime minister could agree to it. And by the way, the right of return for people who by the way, vast majority of those people have been born. They're the children and grandchildren of the people who left. There have been mass expulsions of people within the Middle East, within that region, and everyone's only asking for one side to return. So you think Hamas won't take the deal?
Not in a million years. And
Okay.
I'll tell you what, I was in Canada with my husband and his best mate, who's also a Lebanese Christian, and a couple of days ago, and I said, look, we argued about this. This could have ended on October the 8th. All they had to do was give up the hostages and put down their weapons. And every single day they could have ended this war.
Yeah.
And they still won't do it because they demand the destruction of Israel from the land, what do they call it, from the river to the sea. It's not going to happen.
It's just that simple. Very interesting, George. Thank you very much. You look forward to that 2 o'clock speech from Keir Starmer. That'll send you right off. Sort the jet lag out. Thank you very much, George. Paul's on the line in Southampton. Paul, how optimistic or pessimistic are you?
This will never. It just will not work. Absolutely never. Not in a million years.
Why not?
There's no consequence for Hamas.
Well, a lot of them are dead.
Well, yeah, but
including their leaders in Qatar.
Doesn't matter. If they say no, what's going to happen to them? It's going to be the status quo.
No. That's the whole point. They get basically, finish the job is what Donald Trump has said. Netanyahu can lead us forward. He can make it clear. See, we're the ones who want peace. They don't want peace. At which point we go in. They already seize a lot of Gaza City, and we take them out. I mean, whether they can ever take them out is a question, but it's not the status quo.
Yeah, but it will be. Because the fighting's going to carry on. It's never going to stop. And when you have a West that is anti-Semitic ingrained in all of its government, which I think it is, the Israelis have no chance. They're damned if they do, and they're damned if they don't.
Oh, absolutely. Except the key thing is this is existential for Israel, so they don't have a choice. And whether you get your Macron or your Starmer or your Carney or anyone else pontificating on the world stage makes not a blind bit of difference if you actually have to keep your own people safe from radical, murderous lunatics who want to kill you and your children. It's like Britain standing alone in the Second World War when we were on our own. We didn't have a choice.
No. Well, I mean, if you look at ISIS, ISIS are in the Sinai Desert. There's little groups of them. There's ISIS in North Africa. They haven't eradicated it. Nope. So this is not going to be solved. It never will, because you can't have a two-nation state because one is hell-bent on killing the other ones. If I was the Israelis, I would push them back into the Sinai. They should never have given it back in 1967.
There are some interesting arguments on that indeed. Paul, thank you very much. So our callers, by the way, know an awful lot more about this topic than do most Labour MPs, it would appear, but there we are. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break right now, and then we're going to be talking to the editor of Labour List, that's Emma Burnell, about the Labour Party conference and what she's expecting to hear from the Labour Prime Minister in his speech later today. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 11:35 is the time. Do keep your calls coming in. 0344 499 1000. We're asking you particularly about this peace deal in the Middle East. Is it going to be, quote, eternal peace in the Middle East? That's what Donald Trump claims. But I also want to hear from you about Keir Starmer. Is he going to bring eternal peace in the Labour Party? He's going to give a big speech today. His keynote speech, 2 o'clock today. Don't worry, we're not taking it live. We like you too much. Usual rules here. But he's going to say, delivering hard truths to the party faithful. He's going to say that beating reform will require decisions that are not cost-free or easy, decisions that will not always be comfortable for our party. Things like getting tough on migrants, both legal and illegal, and on welfare. It's not going to go down well with the left wing of his party, who, let's face it, would like to get rid of him and turf him out. That's according to all the polls that we've seen. Andy Burnham would be the favourite to take over. Well, let's talk about all of this now with Emma Burnell. She's editor of Labour List and joins us live from Liverpool at Labour Party conference. Very good morning to you, Emma.
Good morning.
Thank
Hi,
you so much for joining us from a relatively quiet corridor, unusually, at the conference. We're told this is a big keynote speech. Is this another one of his resetting his leadership, another one of his, you know, telling the people what he stands for? Because I haven't got a clue what he stands for or what this government wants to do.
Well, I think that's what needs to come out of today. There needs to be a story, not just of what the government has done, which they've done quite a lot, but they are not telling a clear, coherent story of what that means and what that means for the future. So there needs to be a vision. There needs to be, this is what the country will look like once we have done the things that we're putting through Parliament, rather than simply just the business of government. They need to have a story of government.
Well, again, I mean, the thing is, what is the story of government? What have they done? Because the thing that most voters are most aware of, according to all the polls, is the winter fuel allowance being cut for 10 million pensioners and then backtracking on it, being forced by Labour backbench to backtrack. I think also national insurance hike for employers and a load of people losing their jobs. I mean, is that a story worth telling?
Well, there's plenty worth telling. There's a lot of legislation that is really exciting, both to Labour members and very popular in the country.
Tell us
you're
the
right.
story.
Well, for example, bringing the railways back into public ownership, very, very publicly popular and, of course, incredibly popular with Labour members. Things like GB Energy, building 1.5 million new homes, and a lot of those being for social housing. All of these things are popular, and they're popular with Labour members. They're that sweet spot that they can craft a narrative from. Okay. But you're right that what they didn't do, particularly with things like winter fuel, was actually build that into the much bigger narrative. It sort of came out of nowhere, and so it didn't fit, and it jarred, and that's why it made such an impact. Because,
yeah, and it impacted
nobody
the people,
was really expecting it.
Yeah, it impacted the people that Labour claimed they cared about. I mean, you say railways back into public ownership. Yeah, that's a very popular policy. Most people don't get the train from one year to the next. I mean, not just they don't get it to work, they don't get a train most years. I still haven't worked out, and no one's been able to tell me what it is that GB Energy actually does. And they say they're going to build 1.5 million homes. They're already behind on that target. Yes, there's a lot of rejigging and changing of the planning rules, and I'm all in favour of that. Always been very clear that's a good move. But no one actually thinks they're going to build 1.5 million new homes. We haven't got the builders or indeed the concrete to do it, interestingly. So when you say that's part of the narrative, I'm not sure any of those three things actually touches the size of what voters care about.
Well, they will be judged on delivery on all of these things. If getting a train becomes more popular, which it should.
Why would it become more popular?
And I get them very regularly.
Yeah, I know, but it's a middle-class obsession. No, it's a southern middle-class obsession, the trains. Most people in this country don't get on a train
really
at all.
If you talk to anyone from who has to deal with Northern Rail or anyone trying to get from east to west in this country
but it's
by
an
rail,
obsession. The
then
middle class is
it's
in
not
the
a
south.
southern middle-class obsession at all.
Most people in this country don't get a train from one year to the next. 80% of people in this country drive to work.
They do, and actually it would be much better if more people had reliable, available, clean, quick, fast and good trains, and that's what I mean when I talk about it'd be great if the trains
them back
were better
into
and
public
more of us
ownership.
were moving out of our cars and moving on to them.
But, yeah, OK, most people don't live on a direct train route to their workplace, and bringing them back into public ownership won't make a blind bit of difference to that. Look, the things people care about, they care about the economy, they do care about the NHS. We've got this announcement on sort of virtual national NHS appointments. I mean, that sounds good. Take another 2 years if it happens. But we've also got the issue on migrants. Now, one of the things Keir Starmer seems to be hinting at in this speech is that the need, got to get tough on the migrant issue, not just smashing the gangs. Singularly failing to do that so far. We're 40% plus up on the year before in terms of the number of migrants who've crossed here. We've only managed to do an exchange programme with about 6 of them so far with France. And dealing with legal migrants, he decries a policy that acknowledged by reformers racist and immoral on Sunday. And on Monday, his own Home Secretary, Shahbaz Mahmood, announced pretty much the same policy, except it didn't apply retrospectively, which apparently means it's not immoral and racist. I mean, it's not a coherent strategy, is it?
I mean, there are I think the difference between the reform plan and what Shabana Mahmood has set out, I mean, partly you're absolutely right, the retrospective thing just seems weird and cruel, but there is a real issue with migration, and I think Labour have been too squeamish about saying that for a long time. We need to be conscientious about protecting our borders and making sure that the people who apply to be here legally are able to apply to be here legally in a way that works, and those who are not able to be here legally are removed. And I think it's not a racist thing to say that, and I don't think it's either an anti-Labour thing to say that. And Labour needs to make sure that they are taking that message, but making sure that when they say that, they are then saying, but those who are here legally, who come to our country, who are entitled to asylum, are properly looked after and assimilated so that they can contribute to this society. And that's the more Labour message.
OK, well, that is the more Labour message. But you said here the real issue, there is a real issue on migration, and the Labour's been too squeamish to talk about it. Look, obviously you're not representing the Labour Party as such or the government. I understand that. You're speaking as as editor of Labour List. But the reality is, actually, the Labour Party, and certainly the Labour leadership, has not recognised there's a problem with migration, legal or illegal, particularly illegal, vast mass immigration. Anyone who, people like me from 2000 onwards, who said, I'm not sure this is a good idea, we were decried as racist, been called far right by lots of Labour people. Your side has been telling us that they're a massive economic boon to the country, and anyone who thinks differently doesn't like brown people, even when it's white people who are immigrants from Eastern Europe, for goodness sake. So it's not that Labour's been squeamish about saying it or doing anything. Labour didn't even acknowledge it was a problem and told off the people who said it was and called them far right and racist. That's not being squeamish. That's just, you had your heads in the sand for a long time.
Look, Labour have a long history of being an internationalist party. Sometimes that's come with not recognising some of the issues around migration. That is certainly true of the past, but I think anyone, and certainly some of the people on the left of the Labour Party who are upset at some of the rhetoric that has been used by the current leadership, would tell you that that's not where Labour is right now. And that, I think what's important is what Labour's doing now. And I think there has been a focus on the immigration issue since Labour's been in power. It's going to take time. There was a huge asylum backlog that they inherited, and getting that system working, and not just working in a way that deals with the backlog, but working in a way that deals with everything that needs to be done around issues like making sure that we're housing people in a way that is acceptable both to those human beings, but also to the communities that find them people living in their midst. Making sure that we are assimilating people, making sure that people are learning English.
How do you do that? I mean, how do you do that? If people arrive, and we've seen the figures, and yes, it happened under the Tories, not under Labour, but we basically had, was it 1.6 million more people arrive in this country, largely actually from the Indian subcontinent, Nigeria as well, but just arriving in this country. How on earth do you assimilate that many people arriving in 1 or 2 years?
Well, I mean, as you say, that was something that's happened over the previous government. I think what you need to do is make sure that there are conditions that make people feel welcome, but also make people feel like they have a responsibility to the country that they're living in. I think we all have a responsibility to our country, and some of those things are important, like, for example, putting the English requirements on. Okay. Some people get, again, squeamish about that. I'm not one of them, not least because it's actually really important to make sure that we build community, and one of the key things that communities can do is communicate with each other.
Well, exactly. If you can't speak to someone, you can't get a job, you can't communicate at the school gate, etc. I mean, again, this is stuff David Cameron was talking about quite some years ago, again, decried by the left over it. But you mentioned earlier, you said, it's interesting, you said that the reform policy, and reform are getting a lot of attention this week at Labour Party conference, very much the focus, in fact, of the Tories as well. But the retrospective aspect of deportations of people who have been here, often even been given, indefinite leave to remain, because they basically arrived here, they've worked here, after 5 years, and then they're entitled to basically apply to stay here for the rest of their lives, bring their family members, go on benefits, they're going to get a pension later on, I mean, all of that. But actually, they're not net contributors to this country. People who've even committed criminal offences being able to stay in this country. You're saying that a retrospective deportation of people like that, you're saying that's weird and cruel. Why is that weird and cruel? If I went to live in another country, whether it was France or Pakistan or you know, or Brazil, if I was not a net contributor to that country, if I wasn't working, I was living on benefits, or I committed a crime, I would absolutely expect that country to say, off you go, toddle off home.
Well, because of everything we've just been talking about building community.
I don't want to build a community with someone who's arrived from Pakistan, doesn't speak English, commits a crime and doesn't have a job. I don't want to build a community with a Canadian or an Australian who does the same.
Communicate. If we want people to contribute, then we need to make sure that they have the security that allows them to put the effort into doing that.
What do you mean by that?
If we just say, oh well, there's a sword of Damocles hanging over your head. We can change the policy at any time.
Yeah.
The settled status you think you have is going to disappear. What incentive is there then to actually assimilate?
Well, the incentive would be.
Want people to contribute.
No, Emma, the incentive would be to assimilate, to learn good English, to get a job, to work hard, to not rely on the state and not expect that the host nation pays for you.
And then you have your leave to remain removed anyway.
No, but you wouldn't have it. No, but you wouldn't. That's the whole point of the policy. You would No, Nigel Farage's policy was you would reapply, and then you would have to show that you weren't a drain on the economy here, and you were contributing. Why would that be, in your words, weird and cruel?
You're a second-class citizen, even though you...
you're not a citizen. You're a foreigner living in another country.
You're not a citizen. No, that was a poor choice of words on my part.
So you're
second class.
Yes, you don't have the same rights.
You're not allowed to be part of the place where you live. Now, I don't know about you, but being part of
you're
my
not part of it, though, because you're a foreigner.
Same as my neighbours.
No, if I go and live in France, I'm not French. I'm British. I'm a foreigner. I can integrate, I can make a contribution, but I'm not French.
However British you are, you might feel part of that village. You want to contribute, you want to build community. And that's what we're talking about.
But nothing would stop you doing...
wants to take away from people is the ability to build community, to feel part of something.
No, there's nothing in that policy that says that. There's nothing in the policy that says that. On the contrary, it requires and encourages people to do the exact thing you say that they want to do anyway.
It takes something away from people that they feel that they've already earned, that they have got through that contribution
for 5 years, so now I can
If you want to do it going forward, then you're removing the security that allows us to build community, and that security is absolutely at the heart of how people can build their communities and take part in their everyday lives, in their neighbourhoods.
I'm just not quite sure what community people have to offer the local community if they come to this country, barely speak the language, give up work after 5 years and relying on benefits. I'm not quite sure what contribution
I can tell you that the neighbours I have are absolutely contributing.
Well,
they're a great community.
So if they reapplied,
WhatsApp group, it's fabulous.
So if they reapplied to leave to stay, they would be able to stay. So what's the problem?
Well, because why are they having to reapply?
Because they're not British.
What a whole load of... If Nigel Farage wants to cut bureaucratic waste, why is he making people do everything twice?
Because after 5 years, someone might no longer be working and contributing.
And why? So why are you having? If you've already got settled leave to remain, you have proved that you've reached the conditions for it. Why are we making people jump through that hoop all over again?
Because the conditions that have been given to people to leave to remain.
You've already got it.
They've been very minimal.
I thought Nigel Farage wanted less government waste.
They've been very, very minimal. Well, because if someone after 5 years is able to not work, claim benefits, be entitled to pensions and all of that, then actually that's an awful lot of extra cost to British taxpayers who may well love having a chat with that person over the garden fence, but may not want to pay taxes.
There's an awful lot of extra cost to British taxpayers of having to go after everybody who's already proved their worth.
They haven't proved
and
their worth.
And are living in this country.
Well, listen,
But they've got settled leave to remain. They've got their settled leave to remain.
That doesn't mean they've proved their worth to this country. That doesn't. The bar to get settled leave to remain is you've been here 5 years. It's not a high bar, Emma. It's not a high bar.
Well, I think there is more to it than that. We both know that.
Not much.
Ultimately,
not much. Listen, I'm going to have to leave it there. I'm so sorry.
You say that. I mean, I think that's...
Emma, I'm so sorry. We are completely out of time. We're way over time, in fact. I'm going to have to leave it there. Please come on again after Labour Party Conference. Come in the studio. We can have a proper debate about it. I'd love to be able to talk with you about it. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll have to go to a quick break. Up next, going to talk about those NHS reforms that are announced by the Prime Minister later on today. This is Talk.
Out yesterday that smearing people who raise legitimate concerns about immigration as racist is the fresh new thinking that Keir Starmer has become famous for. And that is why, by the way, he is the most unpopular Prime Minister, according to a poll that came out this week, on record.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense, and we are very, very, very short on time, so I'm going to get straight to my next guest, Roy Lilly, a former NHS Trust chairman. We're going to... good morning to you, Roy.
Good morning, Julia.
Apologies for that. We've had a bit of a ruck about migrant policy, as I'm sure you were hearing.
I was watching. Now, I want you to be gentle with me.
Never with you, never with you. You know you can handle it. I want you to tell us a little bit about this policy announcement from Keir Starmer unveiling this virtual hospital service. A, what is it? And B, will it actually change our lives at all?
What it is that some of the dialogues that you would go to hospital have, like, for example, let's say you've had a hip operation and then you go to the outpatient's appointment post-operatively, and you take your day off work, you spend a fortune to park your car, you traipse through the outpatient's department, you sit there, it's running late for 3 hours, you get called in and they say, "Oh, Mr. Lilly, how's your hip?" "Fine." "Any pain?" "No." "You sleeping all right?" "Yes." "Fine. Let's have a look at the wound." "Yes." "Terrific. Thanks very much. Come back in 3 months." You can do that with a selfie on the phone.
Yeah.
So it's that chunk of what we call the care pathway, which they will carve out and put on the phone. A bit like GPs now. A third of all GP appointments now are done on the phone, and people love it because, as I say, they don't have to go to the surgery and be coughed all over and take time. So it's very popular. I mean, they're talking about saving 8 million appointments or creating 8 million appointments. Well, I mean, that's 8 million dialogues people have got to have. The surgeon who carried out the operation, not necessarily the specialist, could be a registrar.
But when you say 8 million, again, what percentage of the number of appointments there are? Because aren't there hundreds and hundreds of millions of appointments?
There are, Julia, and I don't understand. You know, I've read and reread the press release in as much as, you know, that I've got the bit that Starmer's, I know what he's going to say. It makes no sense to me, and so perhaps there's more context in it when he reads it.
That's a bit of a worry. I mean, it does sound a little bit like, oh, we're a first world country entering the 21st century, that you can do things online. I mean, a lot of that's been online anyway. As you said, lots of us just... And do I really need to go into the GP to have this very short conversation, or can I just frankly write an email?
Yeah,
I think a lot of us prefer that.
There are other bits as well. They want to try and get people to make their own appointments. And then actually in the 10-year plan, the NHS 10, which has just come out, they're talking about people self-referring to and that's not a great idea.
I think that's definitely better, because we know we've got the worried well, we've got people who just permanently want to either a GP appointment or NHS consultant, and NHS consultants therefore not being available to see people. I mean,
I think you know what's going to happen. There's going to be a waiting list for online NHS someday. You know, you just, at the end of the day, the more capacity you create, the more it fills up. So what you've got to do is to try and cut the demand, stop people getting sick in the first place, focus on the community, social care. The two big users of the NHS are the over 65s and the under 9s. Both of those say to me, community nurses, district nurses, better GP access. So
a lot of the unsexy stuff, which actually is the stuff that really does make a difference to people's lives. That's the really tragic thing.
Health visitors. I mean, we don't have enough health visitors, but they're hugely useful for mums and not sure what to do and what have you. So
and they pick up on problems very, very early.
Absolutely.
Well, again, here's an idea. Maybe if we didn't lock the country down for a couple of years and basically turn off the NHS for 6 months to pretty much everybody who didn't have COVID, maybe wouldn't be in quite the mess we're in. But what do you make of the criticism? I know they're going to bring it up, and Wes Street and the Health Secretary is speaking, saying, you know, Nigel Farage is coming for the people who make the NHS. He said he was a snake oil salesman and a con artist, and talking about how basically how, you know, they're going to I think the Prime Minister is going to say that basically a Farage-run health service would check your pockets before your pulse. But hasn't he just been calling for there to be change to the NHS to bring it into line with pretty much every other Western country's insurance-based health system, where people don't have waiting lists and get very good service?
Yeah, I mean, there's a complicated answer to that, but he has, Farage, as far as I've followed him, has had a number of iterations of what his policy is. He's gone from having a straight, outright insurance-based system through to carrying on with the system that he is now. Of course, immigration policy would hit the NHS. People not earning $60,000 a year are going to be turfed out. Well, that's, you know, goodbye to a lot of nurses and things like that. So, I mean, I don't know where it sits on that. Tell you what really surprises me.
Very quickly, yes.
Yeah, is the extent to which the Labour Party keep mentioning Farage. He's had free adverts.
Yeah, absolutely. They've not been very good at their own communication skills, I think we can safely say. They've got more to say about reform than what they're going to do. Roy Lilly, thank you very much. I'm so sorry it was so short, but given that you can't really make head or tail of this policy, perhaps we didn't need longer. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio, on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube, or your connected device, it's great to have your company. A lot more to talk about in the next hour, including taking your calls as well on 0344 499 1000 about that Trump peace plan for the Middle East. Love to hear your thoughts on that. You can get in touch with us on Talk as well, and send your message to 87222, and you can text us I say on that number, and you can tweet us at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1, standard network rate message. We'll get to more of those messages. We're also going to be talking more about Shabana Mahmood, who's likened some of the United Kingdom marches, that Tommy Robinson march earlier this month, to the pea-bashers and the skinheads of old. Is she right? We're also going to be talking about the Chancellor Rachel Reeves' announcement yesterday to tackle youth unemployment. We're told 1 in 8 people who are aged 18 to 24 are not in employment, education or training. A load of them, unfortunately, are claiming on the sick, claiming to have anxiety and depression. Well, it turns out her big plan, emerged today, will only tackle 1 in 20 of the young people who are on benefits. Not entirely sure that's going to touch the side of the welfare and benefit problem, but we'll get to that later in the show. Lots more to talk about, and joining me still in the studio is Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, and I'm delighted to say joining us today is Jake Wallace-Simons as well. He's the author of a brand new book, Never Again: How the West Betrayed the Jews and itself. A very good afternoon to you.
Hello.
Lovely to have you in the studio for a change, but also what a day to have you in to talk about your brand new book. We've got it on the screen. On a day when so much of the news is dominated by this peace plan. Before we talk about it, let's just play a couple of quick clips from that press conference in the White House yesterday, where certainly Donald Trump, as usual, was, downplaying his efforts. Let's have a watch and listen of what he had to say.
This is a big, big day, a beautiful day, potentially one of the great days ever in civilization. And most importantly, we discussed how to end the war in Gaza, but it's just a part of the bigger picture, which is peace in the Middle East. And let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East.
Indeed, let's call it eternal peace in the Middle East. We shall see how that turns out. Here's what Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, had to say, rather more, I should say, fact-based.
I support your plan to end the war in Gaza, which achieves our war aims. It will bring back to Israel all our hostages, dismantle Hamas's military capabilities, end its political rule, and ensure that Gaza never again poses a threat to Israel.
Well, that was what the two men behind this peace plan had to say. We're waiting now on Hamas to decide whether or not they're going to sign up to it and what that means. Jake Wallace-Simons, we've spoken to you so much in the last couple of years, and we are, next Tuesday is the anniversary, the second anniversary of the October the 7th massacre in 2023, and you've got this brand new book out, Never Again. What do you make of the peace plan? You could talk through some of the detail of that, and what do you think the chances are that it could deliver this so-called eternal peace?
Well, this is obviously one of the most intractable conflicts in the world, so whether this will work or not, who knows? It could be the best day in Western civilization, as Donald Trump said. It could not be. But either way, it's got a hell of a bigger chance to work than the Macron, Starmer, pathetic appeasement plan. And the two main differences, I think, are, number one, what comes out from the Trump plan is he actually wants Israel to win, by which he means he wants...
What a crazy idea,
he wants the forces of democracy to prevail against the forces of jihad. Sounds crazy, but that's what he wants. He wants the hostages to be released first. And he said that if Hamas doesn't release all the hostages within 72 hours, then the gloves are off, the plan's off, and they're done for. And Netanyahu's got the green light to wipe them out. Whereas the Macron-Starmer peace plan said, we'd like the hostages back at some point, please. No plan, no conditions, that was it.
Yeah.
And the other really big difference between them was that the Macron-Starmer peace plan just gave the Palestinians everything, gave them recognition of a state.
They called it a reward themselves.
Without making any demands of them to do anything.
Yeah.
So you know, it does seem like the European plan just wants the Palestinians to win.
And the interesting thing is, of course, Middle Eastern leaders have backed this plan. No doubt that was all done behind the scenes, long before that press conference announcement. Qatar have had a bit of a reality check with that Israel attack on the Hamas leaders in Qatar, and a sort of, hey, you know, just like Iran, you know, you guys are on the list too. What did you make of that phone call that Netanyahu appears to have been for? I'm not sure it would have been his choice to make. Phone call he made to the Emir of Qatar to apologise for taking out terrorists who've, you know, orchestrated the attack of the October 7th attack on his own people, and then to apologise for targeting them in Qatari territory. I mean, I thought that was quite extraordinary that he made that phone call, so he must have felt it was worth it.
Yeah, I mean, it's being billed as an apology. I'm not sure it actually was an apology. I think it was more that he sought to explain to them that he wasn't seeking to target Qatar. He was just going after the terrorists. And the thing was that if it would have been a Mossad operation with a, you know, an assassination on the ground with a bomb planted, it wouldn't have seemed like a nation state attacking another nation state. But the fact that it was a missile shot from a plane outside of Qatari territory that went in, you know, it does seem like that. So I think he wanted to clarify that and lay the groundwork for working together. And that's the other real sort of plus point for this plan versus the European plan, that it actually involves people on the ground. It involves the Israelis, it's got the backing of the Arab states, and it may even get Hamas on board. If not, then they'll be wiped out.
What do you think the chances are? Because that's it, they've got the option, you know, you have to basically give up having any role in leadership of the country. You have to lay down your weapons. You can leave the country if someone will take you. I don't know who wants them. Or you can stay, lay down your weapons, but you have to give the hostages back. They'll get that exchange of prisoners as well. I mean, you know, Hamas get to basically walk what's left of them. Hamas get to walk away scot-free at that point, don't they? Is this a win for Hamas, or the fact that they wouldn't be engaged in the government, not officially anyway, is that a big loss for them?
I think that this is not Hamas as it was on October the 7th. No. You know, Hamas has had layer after layer of leadership assassinated or killed. These are, a lot of them are kids.
Well, I thought Israel was just targeting children. Did you not get that memo?
Sorry. I must reprogram my head with the BBC. BBC lines.
Let Jeremy Bowen, if you're here, do come and help. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, Hamas leadership has been decimated. The top layer, the second layer, the third layer, all the way down. So what we've got now really are a lot of the time it's kids who've picked up a Kalashnikov, not little kids, but teenagers sometimes, fighting the Israelis. Don't have any experience of leadership, of military strategy or manoeuvres or anything like that. And so I think that they've got two cards left. What they want is to ideally keep the hostages, that's a big card, and if not, keep their own survival, not because they care about their lives, but because when they live, they'll be able to further the cause of destroying Israel.
Here's the thing, what I find very interesting, before we get to the more detail of your book and what it's about and why you felt the need to write it, is that, you know, pro-Palestinian people have been, you know, the campaigners and supporters, they're happy to wave their flag, wear their keffiyeh, whether politically, you know, political leadership or indeed people are on the street, remarkably quiet on social media the last 20 hours or so. You'd have thought that these are people who absolutely profess that, you know, their biggest concern in the world is innocent Palestinian civilians, particularly children, who are claiming there is a genocide and mass starvation and that Israel is completely, you know, the cause of all of this, and that Hamas are basically just imposed on the Palestinian civilians and it's not their choice. You'd think they would be absolutely clutching at this peace plan with both hands, saying a chance for these people to be fed, to be saved, to not have Hamas ruling them. But they seem remarkably quiet. Is that possibly because that their motive is not support for the innocent Palestinian people they claim to support, but something else?
Well, Julia, I mean, look, the truth is, unfortunately, that all the people, or many of the people, the majority of the people, I would say, who take to the streets week after week in support of the Palestinians don't really care about the Palestinians. They only
almost
care,
like Hamas.
They only care about what the Palestinians can do for them, can do for their own ego, their own image, their own politics. If they really cared about the Palestinians, for a start, they'd be celebrating this peace plan, but also they would be protesting against Hamas, or they would have been since the beginning of the war. There are more protests against Hamas in Gaza than there are on the streets of London. That tells you a lot about the people on the streets week after week.
OK, well, look, let's talk more in detail about your book, Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself. Now, I mean, the first time I talked to you about a book you wrote was about Islamophobia. Sorry, Israelophobia. Sorry.
That's something else.
Yes, exactly. Well, quite. I don't know where that came from. Israelophobia. You know, and the oldest hatred, and absolutely fascinating. You describing, the hatred of Israel. I know it's not the same as anti-Semitism, but my goodness me, that Venn diagram is very, very round, is it not? Tell us what this book is about. Why do you say it's never again? Question mark, crucially. Why never again? Question mark.
Well, I think since October the 7th, we've had to draw the question mark behind never again, after never again. It's no longer assured that it's never going to happen again, because we can no longer depend upon our allies in the West to back up that vow which they made in 1945. And what I'm looking at in that book is how the rise in anti-Semitism, obviously it's bad for the Jews, but what it tells us is something that's almost worse about the West. You know, since October the 7th until now, every now and again, someone like me will get a call from someone in Israel saying, "How are you?" And I'll say, "No, how are you?" And I'll say, "No, how are you?" Because we'll be all right. But the West, the future of the West is less assured, because the Jews know who they are. We've been around for thousands of years. We've survived, attempt after attempt to wipe us out, and have flourished in spite of that. The West, however, the rise in anti-Semitism here says some very bad things about how we've lost ourselves. We've lost our sense of identity, our sense of confidence, our sense of who the enemy is, our sense of who our friends are, and our ability to stand up and demand that people either play by our rules or get lost. We've lost all that. The Jews haven't, and for that reason I think the Jews will survive, but as for the West, that's more of a worry.
That's very interesting, and again, that was my big take from a recent trip to Israel, and again, also the phone call, "How are you?" The person I was speaking to yesterday for a podcast spent most of the night in a bomb shelter with a 1-year-old child, because of warnings of bombs. I mean, it is an extraordinary thing that they should be worried more about us and worried about anti-Semitism here in the UK as well. And I can understand that, because that sense of community and the existential battle that Israel is in, I do liken it to what happened in the Second World War, with Britain standing firm against the Nazis. And people talk about people doing the right thing. People didn't have a choice. Yeah. And people in Israel don't have a choice right now. You have no choice. If you want to survive, this is what you need to do. Why do you think, because you and I have spoken about this before, why do you think the West has lost its way so much? Not just that going down the route of anti-Semitism again. And by the way, it's the nice people. We've always had the extreme right, the skinhead, that side of things. But that was kind of dissipating. That was going. I mean, we definitely imported a lot of anti-Semitism. If you import a lot of people, Arabs from the Middle East, I'm afraid you import their cultural values. And one of their strong cultural values, largely across the Middle East, is anti-Semitism. But we've also got a whole load of sort of the left wing, the Jeremy Corbyns, others. But there's a whole, but it stretches, I think, way into even this cabinet right now, of these left, the nice people, the so-called progressives, who, they got a problem with Jews.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
Well, this is a big question, and it's one that I explore a lot in my book. But I think what it comes down to is the aftermath of the Second World War, that first vow of never again. And the elites came up with the idea, the concept, the culture, that in order to avoid fascism, you have to get rid of our sense of selfhood. So we have to get rid of our sense of national pride, our sense of respect for our borders, of our history,
and
patriotism. And you need to have governments to govern our governments, because our governments couldn't be trusted to govern themselves.
And the people couldn't be trusted to elect the right governments.
Exactly. And what developed was a kind of what Eric Kaufman, the political scientist, called an asymmetrical multiculturalism, a sort of what Roger Scruton called down with us, but up with everybody else.
Yeah.
It's sort of basically fineism. Everyone's basically fine apart from ourselves.
And that's like the when in Rome thing, isn't it? Well, when in Rome, you must take on the culture of the country you're in, apart from when people come to Britain, when we should absolutely adapt to their culture.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you're the Romans, we're adapting to you,
yes.
and you've just come here.
But that's the weird thing about that, is this idea, of course, that we don't have a culture. And part of that, isn't it, just that we don't have a, our church is a kind of, if you could turn up on Christmas Eve or on your wedding day, that's good, thanks very much, call yourself a C of E. We're kind of a sort of a, we take a lot of our cultural norms and traditions with a pinch of salt, don't we? In terms of, we're not evangelical largely, you're not forceful on this. Our state religion, C of E, most people here, most people in Britain are agnostic or atheist now. People kind of shrug, yeah, I'm a Christian because my parents got me Christian, you know, but that we don't celebrate the strengths of that culture. When I say as an atheist, I massively celebrate the strengths of that Judeo-Christian culture, which delivered to us things like, you know, individual rights and women's rights and human rights and our freedoms and the Industrial Revolution. I mean, that is all completely caught up in that Judeo-Christian culture. But we've decided in the West, so many of our leaders anyway, that none of that is, not only doesn't matter, but actually it's a bad thing.
Yeah, I mean, I think that what you're describing really is the old way that we used to be, when we had the confidence of empire, the confidence of victory in the Second World War behind us. And so we didn't need to assert ourselves with our flag. We didn't need to be particularly chauvinistic or jingoistic about it. We just knew who we were. But that kind of modesty, and it's also a modesty that comes from the British character as well, but that was in a way exploited by elites who were trying to tell us to undo our selfhood, to tamp it down further, with devastating results often. I mean, one little example that always sticks in my mind is the one of Salman Abedi, the guy who bombed the Manchester Arena a few years ago, killing 22 people. Now, he was spotted by a security guard called Carl Lawler, which I talk about in my book, who spotted him, was suspicious of this Muslim-looking man carrying a heavy backpack, but didn't stop him because he feared that he was being Islamophobic. Yeah. That's what they've done to us. They've caused us to doubt our instincts, to believe that we're racist before we believe anything else about ourselves, with horrible, blood-soaked results.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, the rise of not just anti-Semitism, but the obsession with people's race, religion, and things like that as above all else, as opposed to character, actions and deeds, which is what certainly the 1960s progressive view was about, has certainly taken over, I mean, in every area of British, I would say, Western life. But it's particularly imbued in our leadership, and not just on the left. It's, you know, it's in the Tory party as well. It's certainly the Lib Dems, Greens, it's all over the world. But where do you think the anti-Semitism that we are seeing here and now, and I would say, I mean, even in recognition of a Palestinian state, there is no scenario where an attack was made on any other culture, any other people, any other country that would result in that reward from Western progressive leaders, as they think of themselves, like Keir Starmer, like Mark Carney, like Emmanuel Macron. But Jews/Israel singled out. Why do you think that is?
I think there's a lot of reasons, but one of them is that, I mean, you talk about those leaders all feeling like the same people with different coloured rosettes, and I described it in my book as centrist fundamentalism. Yeah. That they're centrist and they're fundamentalist because they're demanding that anybody who doesn't agree with them is a fascist or a racist and must be sidelined and silenced. And that's what we're seeing a backlash to today. And I think that in a way Israel represents a democracy that hasn't lost its sense of self and hasn't lost its ability to fight for its people and to understand who its enemies are. I mean, you talked about being in the bomb shelter with a one-year-old, that experience. Israelis know they can do that. Yeah. We don't know we can do that anymore, I don't think. And so I think that in a way, Israeli culture, Jewish culture, we're Democrats, we gave the world its system of morality, certainly the Western world its system of morality. We know who we are, and we're also democratic, and that's a rebuke to the elites who've been trying to tamp down that sense of self in their own societies, thinking that it's an evil thing. And I think that, fast forward to today, you know, Israel has become the mirror image. It's everything that we have lost. Yeah. But as a result, Israel's flourishing. It's one of the happiest countries in the world because it hasn't lost those things.
And interesting, of course, in the West, the celebration of victimhood and Jews and the Israeli state refusing to be victims anymore. I mean, that's never again has to mean something if you've lost every member of your extended family. Exactly.
It's this victimhood. I mean, I wrote a piece for The Spectator this week, linked to my book, about October the 7th. Yeah. And I found myself writing, you know, it's October the 7th, the second anniversary. We don't need your tears. The ones who are going to cry for us have done so already, and the ones who haven't never will. What you need is our defiance. We're not going to start sitting around asking you to feel sorry for us. We're going to fight and defend ourselves and assure our survival. And now that doesn't correspond with the West's view of virtue, of what should be right. And as a result, the West is going down and Israel is the democracy of the future.
And this is the thing, because the reality is, and in every society where anti-Semitism has taken a hold on itself, it doesn't doesn't, they get that famous poem, first they came for the Jews, I was not Jewish. I mean, good God, James O'Brien, I think, cites it every single Monday morning, does he not? But the reality is that, a society where anti-Semitism takes hold, and I think that anti-Israel, I don't think those things are the same, but they are remarkably in common with each other these days. That is the beginning, it's the downfall of civilization. And the West is in an existential battle that so many people don't even recognise, with, mass uncontrolled immigration, with communist forces, with the evil, the dictators of, Russia, of China, but also with Islamofascism. And the nice people, as they like to think of themselves, who've been in charge for so many years, whether with a blue rosette or a red rosette in America, Britain, wherever, it's almost like they haven't woken up to the need to assert Western values, assert democracy, assert liberalism in the true sense of it. And they've kind of forgotten that we're going to have to do that, and we're going to have to do it sooner or later, or we won't exist anymore.
Well, I mean, the poignant thing for me, myself as a British person, and all of us, is seeing our leaders criticising Israel when they should be learning from Israel. If you look at the metrics, in Israel, it's a young country with a high birth rate. Beyond
3 children on average,
which is the only one in the OECD, which is
that's including secular Jews as well. This isn't just very religious families.
Exactly. So it's a young country, growing country. Its economy is booming even during wartime. There was a baby boom even during wartime, first time in history so far as I'm aware. It's culturally coherent. The people know who they are, defend each other, love each other. There's a great sense of family in Israel, and it's one of the happiest countries in the world. It's now, after 2 years of war, is number 8 on the scale, behind the Scandinavian countries. We're 24, I think. Italy's 40. Right, so that's what Israel's got going for it. It hasn't got mass immigration problems. It hasn't got all these problems that we have. Look at ourselves and our own position. We don't know who we are. We're miserable. We've got a high number of deaths of despair, mental health, lack of patriotism. Our economy is going down the tubes. Our culture's going down the tubes. And we're an ageing country with a bad demographic story to tell. We are looking at a dark next few decades. Israel's looking at a bright next few decades. That's before we even look at the military side. Israel's the most dominant position it's been in since 1967. Our defence is pathetic. So Israel.
The idea that we could have taken on the Iranians, the Hezbollah, Hamas,
or Hamas,
and the forces in Qatar.
So we need to be learning from Israel. I think the people in Britain who are resisting this centrist fundamentalism know it deep down. We've had enough. We're a bankrupt country. We're morally bankrupt. We're economically practically bankrupt. We need to be reinventing ourselves and learning from those virtues that we have lost, which Israel has not let go of.
But I mean, I think the vast amount of British people haven't lost those values.
No.
I think it's
We've
there.
had them beaten out of us.
I think the lion can roar again. I really do believe that, and
Absolutely.
it's just we are led by pygmies. We really
and the message of my book is up with us. Instead of down with us, let's start saying up with us. That will solve everything, including anti-Semitism. Up with us, that's what we need to say.
That's really interesting. Listening to all of this, it's Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online. Your thoughts on what he has to say?
I think what you've both been talking about how the Israel question really speaks to how you feel about the West, and how you feel about civilization, frankly. If you have a jihadist incursion into Israel on the scale and of the barbarism of October the 7th, and you even hesitate as to which side that you're on, I think that speaks to a much broader social sickness. And historically, you've seen it, and Jake has written about it so well. Anti-Semitism is a sign that society is going awry in all kinds of different ways, falling for some very deep maladies, problems, conspiracism, what have you. But I think there's a particular question today, because of the fact that the most deadly, lethal form that anti-Semitism is taking globally is in the form of Islamic jihadism and so on. The fact that we're particularly complacent about that, when we have had the Manchester Arena, when we have had the London Bridge attack a few years ago, when you have had 7/7, and not to compare any of those things to this almost apocalyptic scale of what happened almost 2 years ago in Israel, the fact that there is not a recognition of that common enemy.
Well, I think we should light a candle and not look back in anger, Tom. I think that's the solution, isn't it?
It's just the price you pay for living in a big city. Is kind of how these
but
things
the thing is,
bollards everywhere.
To add to that Hamas is an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is active in Britain, dominates a lot of Muslim communities, has got a political operation, legal operation. They're coming for us too, the same people, and we don't recognise it.
Yeah, I mean, what could possibly go wrong? What has already gone wrong? Exactly. And again, people like me, but just say, if we need to be dealing with this. Like the idea that we should have tens of thousands of people who are in our streets who are actively needing to be watched, but because of the terrorist threat. I mean, maybe that's not the solution.
That's
but
right.
there we are. Jake, it's always so good to talk to you. I know you're a foreign policy journalist as well for many, many years. You know what you're talking about. Jake Wallace-Simons, Never Again, How the West Betrayed the Jews and Itself. 12:26 is the time. This is Talk.
The British people, Mike, are sick and tired of having their legitimate concerns about immigration being dismissed, being belittled, of being patronised, and ultimately being smeared as racist. And I tweeted out yesterday that smearing people who raise legitimate concerns about immigration as racist is the fresh new thinking that Keir Starmer has become famous for. And that is why, by the way, he is the most unpopular Prime Minister, according to a poll that came out this week, on record.
We're not accusing individual politicians or even that whole party of being racist, but we're saying that policy, that approach is, as we said, immoral, racist, unworkable. What's important here is people want practical, fair, but firm solutions. And I think British people have a real sense of fairness, and people want to see a policy that works, that's fair, and that takes tough action to make...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk, the Common Sense, with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. 12:29 is the time. Let's get straight to your phone calls coming in thick and fast. Interestingly, actually, a couple of calls I want to talk to people about is actually, well, things that the Prime Minister is going to say today, and indeed Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, had to say yesterday. Dan is on the line in Portsmouth. And Dan, you want to talk about what Shabana Mahmood had to say about basically, you know, people on that Tommy Robinson march, you know, basically the same as the people shouting problems about, you know, Pakistanis go home in the 60s and 70s. What do you want to say?
Well, I want to say that her language was totally unacceptable. The exact words she used...
Oh, clean it up. Please. I don't know whether she used exact... Because we can't say certain words on there.
I'll tell you what she said. She said in her speech, she came out with the phrase, not all of the people on that march were violent, but some were. Yeah. Not all of the people chanted racist abuse, but some did. Well, I won't even go into that because it was ridiculous watching the numbers. But imagine if I turned around and said, well, not all Muslims behead our soldiers on the streets of England, but some do. Yeah. Not all Muslims rape our vulnerable white kids, but some do.
Very good point.
You know, it can work one way, but it can't work the other. You can't have it both ways.
That is a very fair point. Sorry, I was just a bit worried you were going to get me in trouble with Ofcom with certain rude words. I do apologise for stopping you there, Dan. You know, you make a very, very good point. And that's always the thing, isn't it? Oh, but not all. But again, there were so many people on that march. And again, I do have a problem with some of the people who certainly spoke at that march. I don't know about the people who were on the march, but people who spoke at it, who were on camera, being applauded. But most people I know who went on that march didn't actually see the speakers. They were there, and again, people of all colours, all different political persuasions, who just said, you know, I was there. It felt like a very positive vibe. It felt friendly. People were nice. They weren't the usual, socialist workers marchers. They were actually quite friendly to each other. I think they are making a horrible mistake characterising the people on that march as something that they weren't.
I totally agree, and I agree with you. I think there was a mistake made with some of the speakers. I totally agree with you, right? But one other thing that's gone very quiet, is the arrests that were made, the percentages of those arrests that came from the counter-protests as opposed to the arrests that were made.
They're always quiet about that. But am I not right in thinking that even like the rest, we are talking about, sort of 8 people, and again, there was a group of offshoot of people who wanted to basically try and have battles with the opposing lot, and they were completely separate from the 99.9% of people who were marching.
Well, the other thing, I mean, I saw some. We actually got to Whitehall, me and my family, a mixed group of old and young and male and female. We got to Whitehall, and I saw some of the problems, and I took my people away from it. And
exactly, like normal people would do. Keep away from that.
What it was caused by, I believe, is they were not ready for that amount of people.
Yep.
Okay, we were all hemmed into a very small area, and the police, quite rightly, had to create a hard shoulder.
Yep.
If somebody had had a heart attack or a problem, they weren't getting out of there, right? Well, I get that. I'm on side for that. But they don't communicate it. I watched them as they pushed people back with riot shields, didn't give any explanations, pushing them aggressively, and then they wonder why some idiots respond badly. Now,
no, I completely agree with you. And again, if police officer, I'm on a legal peaceful protest and the police officer did that to me, I would absolutely respond in that way. And that's the thing. And it's not how they police the pro-Palestinian marches every single fortnight. It's nothing. They do it completely differently. They're dressed differently. And I think that's the giveaway. Dan, great call. So appreciate that. I understand your anger on that. Steve is in Valencia in Spain. Stephen, good morning to you. Good afternoon. What do you want to say?
Oh, good afternoon, Julia. I must say, Dan made some great points there. My son-in-law was on that march as well. And he's a normal guy, just driving instructor. A lot of ordinary people there.
Yep, not far-right fascists, funnily enough. Funnily enough.
Yeah.
What do you want to say there, Stephen?
On the other subject of the racism and all the rest of it, I've lived in France for 15 years as a tax resident. I've probably contributed about €300,000 in taxes.
Wait a minute, you get around a bit. You were in France, now you're in Spain. You're very international.
Well, no. Well, I've got an EU residency, so I can be where I want.
Yeah.
But the problem is, the people over here, by and large, I speak fairly good French. I integrate, but it's not my country. Even though I've been there for 15 years, I know that I'm British.
Well, this is the conversation we had with Emma Burnell from Labour List, who's in Labour conference, and she was saying how she thought that it was a really interesting word she used about how she thought it was weird and cruel that Nigel Farage in Reform wanted to deport people who'd been here for years, but, even if they weren't making a contribution. But it's weird and cruel.
No, it's not weird and cruel. No. The thing is, if I wasn't contributing to the French economy, my wife pays health insurance to cover her medication, so we contribute in all sorts of ways. We don't want to be a burden on France. And most expats who are in France bring money in. Yep. Some of them work. We're net contributors. The problem the UK's got is we're a free-for-all. Come here and take what you want.
Fill your bill. Yeah, exactly. And again, people might come here to work, but if they're actually on a minimum wage and they're bringing their whole family, and even if they work with them, they're not actually being net contributors. And then a lot of people, after 5 years, you get your leave to stay. You don't have to work again. I mean, they're clearly those people are not a benefit to us. And again, Emma Burnell was talking about how, well, these would be second-class citizens. Well, no, that's the whole point. They wouldn't be citizens. You don't have a right to just live anywhere you darn well please whenever you want to.
Exactly, and the thing is, Spain now is tightening up. Do people, because a lot of retirees live in Spain, they bring their pension in, but they get their health cover through the UK. The UK pays through an S1 certificate for the health cover. But now Spain are thinking about changing that because the UK is not contributing enough. So these countries are looking at the cost benefit of expats.
As they're quite
in the UK.
They're perfectly entitled to do, exactly. The rules changing, what a surprise. Stephen, really appreciate that call as well. Thank you very much. 12:35 is the time. We're going to take a quick break, then we're going to be talking to Reform councillor Layla Cunningham. I'd love to hear her thoughts on the criticisms we've had of Reform. I mean, Labour seem to be obsessed with them, including what the Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has had to say, calling Nigel Farage a con artist and a snake oil salesman. That's up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 12:38 is the time. Let's talk right now about the Reform Party conference. Oh, no, sorry. It's the Labour Party conference in Liverpool this week. But my goodness, you'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference because they seem to spend most of their time talking about reform and Nigel Farage. No doubt he'll be mentioned by the Prime Minister in his keynote speech this afternoon when he tries to tell us about what his actual aims in life are. Certainly the Home Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has been talking about reform. And Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, I'm not even sure why he got into it. He has been talking about Nigel Farage, has talked about how Nigel Farage is coming for the people who make the NHS. He called the Reform UK leader a snake oil salesman and a con artist. He says that the next election will send Farage packing. Farage says, go home. I say you are home. I've got your back. We've got your back. And in the next election, we'll send Farage packing. Let's talk about this with Layla Cunningham. She's a Reform councillor and co-leads Reform's Law and Order campaign. A very good afternoon to you, Layla.
Hi, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. I'm surprised you're not at Reform conference this week because it does really seem to be Reform and Nigel Farage are living rent-free in Labour's heads, doesn't it?
Labour, Lib Dems, Conservatives, they can only talk about us because we're the only ones worth responding to. We're the only ones speaking what everyone wants to speak about. I mean, it's actually comical that Shabana Mahmood's immigration plan is really kind of a carbon copy of ours, except that they're moving the indefinite leave to remain goalposts.
So, well, hold on a minute. No, they said that yours was racist and immoral. That's what the Prime Minister said. But theirs doesn't backdate. Theirs isn't retrospective. And that's the racist and immoral bit, I think.
But it's not about race. It's not about where you're from.
No one mentioned race, but that doesn't mean...
Yeah, exactly. And it's about doing what's best for the country, what's best for the taxpayer. Maybe they should start doing that themselves. We don't care where you were born or what race you are. If you come to this country and you've been here for decades, then, by all means, claim citizenship, or else you'll have to claim a visa. What is wrong with that? What is racist? I would like them to tell me what exactly is racist. But Julia, theirs is really very similar to ours. In fact, those that are on indefinite leave to remain, she says that she wants to move the goalpost for those that can claim it after 5 years to 10 years if they don't meet certain requirements. And they wouldn't even get it after 10 years if they still don't meet them. So what happens if they don't meet the criteria after a decade? Are they kicked out? Is she going to split families up?
Well, I mean, I imagine that would then be racist and immoral, but it would be okay because Labour would be doing it. But this is
fine for that.
Yeah, but this is the interesting thing. There's no doubt at all when it comes to certainly any immigration policy, legal or illegal, or that all the other parties are chasing reform, and you have massively moved the Overton window on all of these issues. But we've also had the issue with Shabana Mahmood, the Home Secretary, talking about how the people who were on this march, this Unite the Kingdom march, a little bit earlier this month, organised by Tommy Robinson. No, I hold no candle for Tommy Robinson. Don't send me messages, everybody. I don't care, but I hold no candle for him. But I also know an awful lot of people who went on that march. People who I think most people would be very surprised would have gone on that march. And again, people of all backgrounds, colours, jobs, who were on that march, and said there was a massive sense of camaraderie, and it was about standing up for their country and their patriotism and the like, nothing whatsoever to do with any other agenda. But Shabana Mahmood likened those people, she says not all of them, but some of them, to she said the skinheads and the people who were bashing Pakistanis in the 60s and 70s. What do you make of that criticism?
I think it's disgusting. I think it's absolutely disgusting. And she says that some of them were skinheads and racists. But her following sentence, I think, was, they have legitimate concerns and we have to address them. So which is it? Are they racist? Is she admitting that racist concerns should be legitimised and taken into consideration? They don't know what they're doing. Labour's message is totally muddled. They insult the normal public as racist while quietly adopting the same policies. And I think it's absolutely disgusting. I take all her comments, all of Labour's comments, as a big insult. She said that Muslim hatred is off the charts. Well, I can tell you, Julia, I'm Muslim. I don't feel it. Because Muslims who come here and embrace Britain feel absolutely no hatred. It's the British people resent those who refuse to integrate, who want to change the country that's given them so much. And who can blame them? People want to protect their values, their British way of life, and they want those that come to be grateful and want to embrace it too. So I take that. I see that as insulting as well.
Well, you're certainly going to find it insulting what Keir Starmer is going to say. He's speaking in about an hour and a quarter's time. We've just had some previews revealed by the Telegraph that Keir Starmer is going to suggest that Nigel Farage does not love Britain. He's going to say, for me, patriotism is about love and pride, about serving an interest that's more than yourself, a common good. And the question I ask seriously of Nigel Farage and Reform is, do they love our country? Do they want to serve our country? All of it, our beautiful, tolerant, diverse country, every region, nation and city, or do they just want to stir the pot of division because that's what works for their interests? Do they truly believe in our potential, in our brilliance, in all our innovative workers, in our economy? And when push comes to shove, do they really want to fix our problems and renew Britain? Or, as we've seen time and again, whether it's the SNP, the extremes of the left or Reform and the Tories now, do they actually want Britain to fail? He says, I think we know the answer to that question. That is a preview of what Keir Starmer is going to say about your party and your leader. What do you say to that?
I say the country is failing, and the only party and the only leader that's going to save it and has put any policy forward to save it is Nigel Farage. We're the only ones that are talking about putting Britain first and not international treaties and prioritising illegal migrants and prioritising British citizens over illegal migrants. And let me tell you, Reform and myself completely condemn racism outright. But we won't let Labour dismiss, the hundreds of thousands of people on that march, or ordinary people, just because we want secure borders and fair rules.
Yeah, very, very interesting. Can I also ask you just finally about the NHS, because Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, speaking this morning, and we've certainly seen this measure. Obviously, they've done some focus groups suggesting that, people are a bit worried about, the NHS in Reform's hands because of some comments that Nigel Farage made a long time ago about the future of the NHS. Does the Nigel Farage to the Reform Party want to privatise the NHS, as is often claimed?
Absolutely not. We believe very strongly in the NHS, and we
Why?
Well, because I think, so my husband's American, and if you're ill in America and you don't have insurance,
But those aren't the only two models. I mean, most of Europe, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, they have a social insurance system where people pay in. They get much better healthcare. They don't wait in long waiting lists, and they pay probably about the same amount as they're paying in taxes for the NHS. And the government covers the people who can't afford it. Why would you stand by the NHS in those circumstances?
Well, I have a lot of my family work in the NHS. My family's been saved by the NHS, and it's not about how much money we pour into the NHS. It's about spending it right. We've spent 40 billion into the NHS in the past few years, and much worse outcomes.
No, 40 billion is just the top up.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, poured into is what I said. And that needs to change. We can't just keep pouring money into it endlessly without expecting any change or reform. Many things, there's a huge managerial level layer that can be removed. For instance, when I was working at the CPS, we had a huge sustainability department that were on double what I was getting paid. We're just lawyers with computers. Why do we need a sustainability department?
Look, I think a lot of people agree with that. We're going to have to leave it there. But Leila Cunningham, Reform UK councillor, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Tom Slater, editor of Spiked Online, still with me in the studio. Let's go back to this preview of what Keir Starmer's going to say. Basically, believes that Nigel Farage doesn't love Britain. He just wants to stoke division. Do you think? That'll probably play well in the whole. Do you think that will play well with voters who are wavering between Labour and Reform in those red wall constituencies?
No, not in the slightest. I think people will interpret these attacks on Reform as racist, as extreme, as divisive, as an attack on them. You're telling the people who, at the very least, that they are badly misled in terms of
so
turning
you're stupid,
towards the party.
or you're a racist.
Exactly. That's the message that is being sent out here, and you would think that after the decade or more we've had of political elites being forced to recognise that you cannot smear voters, you cannot dismiss their concerns, because at one point or another they're going to rebel against you at the ballot box. You would think that, all of these years after,
2016 should have been a little bit of a giveaway.
It should have been that giveaway, and yet the Labour Party in particular, everything from that bigoted woman moment under Gordon Brown through to Brexit and everything else, should have known that just dismissing what used to be their historic base amongst the working class in this country in those kinds of terms is a hiding to nothing. I know Starmer's trying to dress this up as, I'm talking about the leadership, not... That's not going to wash. People are not going to make that clean distinction, because that's the message that it's going to send out to them.
Yeah, I get that they really are really bad at this being in government thing.
Bad at politics, bad at talking, bad at communication.
Yeah,
I mean, I knew it would be bad, but did you think it would be this?
We've had this conversation literally every hour of every day since they come to power. No one could have possibly dreamt they could be this bad. They really are. 12:48 is the time. Up next, another thing they're going to do that's really bad. They're going to tackle that 1 in 8 young people who haven't got a job or any employment or training or education. Well, they're actually going to tackle only 1 in 20 of the 1 in 8. Brilliant policy. That's the economy sorted. That's up next. This is Talk.
things change.
Isn't it funny how Nigel Farage seems to be dominating the Labour Party conference?
He's a bigger feature of the Labour conference and indeed the Lib Dem conference than he was of our own conference. You've seen the Home Secretary yesterday announcing a very much watered-down plan to deal with ILR, which sounds good in principle. Of course, it's not racist when she says it. It's only racist when we say it.
But that's the weird thing, isn't it? Because
her plan won't tackle those that are already here. It won't tackle the Boris wave, which is where we've come. 3.8 million people have come since the referendum. On current trends, would expect almost 1 million to qualify for ILR and then qualify for benefits.
They've only got really 3 years to wait out until there's somebody else in the White House. And if it's a Democrat, they're in a great place because 8% support for Israel among Democrats at the moment, 6% if you drop to the youth age groups. And there's every chance that they could then leverage that at the UN Security Council and so on.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense. 12:52 is the time. We've got all these big announcements about what Labour are saying this week at their party conference. You'd be mistaken for thinking it's a reform conference. The amount of times they're talking about them, and certainly just talking about what Keir Starmer, we've got a preview of what he has to say in about an hour and a bit's time, basically criticising Nigel Farage, saying he doesn't love Britain and he just wants to stoke division. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work out, but I tell you, I definitely know for sure how it's not going to work out tackling youth unemployment. We were told earlier this week, were we not, by the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, that she wanted to tackle youth unemployment, abolish it even, and basically a youth guarantee, 18 to 21-year-olds who've been on universal credit for 18 months. Not quite sure an 18-year-old's been on it for 18 months, but without earning or learning would be offered paid work only after a year and a half. Now it turns out it's actually only going to be a policy that impacts 1 in 20 of those 1 in 8 young people. Not quite sure that's going to solve the economy, but let's talk about this with Justin Urquhart-Stewart, economist and chairman of the Regionally Investment Platform. Afternoon to you, Justin.
Good afternoon.
Thank you so much for joining us. I have to say, I mean, I was never very confident when I saw the preview of this anyway, in the speech she made yesterday, that people would actually be forced to do anything. But it's very, very, very clear that any youngster on sickness benefit, which is a huge number of them, if you've got stress or anxiety or depression, you won't be included in the people who have to be brought back into the workplace. I mean, then you may as well not bother, mayn't you?
I mean, the plans like addressing this issue have been around for a long time, and they've never really worked. The way you have to try and do it is obviously with carrot and stick. The carrot actually is to make sure that people do have some incentive to do so, by way of actually then making sure maybe they're paying less tax to start with, to make it more worth their while. Also, in terms of incentive there, actually making sure in terms of benefit, well, maybe not so incentive, but the benefit actually decreases the longer you're actually on the system. You may have to make more effort actually to go out and get a job. And then when you get a job, then you'll start getting some of that benefit back again. It can be rather harsh. People see it unfair. No, frankly, this is our money trying to get the economy working. I
don't even get the harsh bit. Can I just say, by the way, it's very difficult to concentrate when you've decided to come on the show as a Bond villain with your cat on your lap.
It gets rather painful because I try to get her off her. I end up with sort of blood spats on my shirt because she's rather sharp nails.
Very disconcerting. Does the cat work, or is it on benefits, or has it got depression? Has it got anxiety?
She's worried about the price of cat food, but then again, so am I. That's what we're all going to end up living on.
But this is the thing, isn't it? This government talks a big game, and the Prime Minister's been talking, and again, something he's going to be saying in the speech with Parliament. I don't know how long this speech is going to be. We've had a lot of previews, but talking about how there's going to be some tough choices, hard choices when it comes to the economy. We know Rachel Reeves is very much hinting at, VAT on private healthcare is the latest and all of that. And, we're expecting things to be pretty difficult, but everything seems to be prepped to the basis. We're going to make all these tough choices. But I mean, the reality is, spending is where the tough choices need to be made, and we cannot afford to have a massively exploding welfare state. We've got lots of older people, lots of sick people. The idea of having huge numbers of young people, perfectly able-bodied young people, not working, not contributing, probably for life, clearly untenable, but they're clearly not willing to get to grips with it.
And that's where you naturally then have that discipline to make sure that this is only a finite amount. You always hear people talk about, these are my rights, I'm entitled to this.
Yeah.
But the other half of rights are also obligations. What are your obligations to the state? And that is actually to be contributing to it. So therefore, you do need some tough love here and say, look, OK, you are going to make sure you actually don't starve. On the other hand, you're not going to be having a living wage on this. Life's going to get tough. And if you want to give them an incentive, you can give them a tax incentive when they're back into work again. And
I wouldn't have any benefits available to them, but then you'd need to have more jobs. And that's, I think, a lot of it. We've talked about it on the show this week, making it the parents' problem. If you want to bring up a feckless youth without a work ethic, well, you're going to be paying for them for a long time. Maybe think again, because they're not going to be able to move out, because they're certainly not going to get a housing benefit. I think a lot of parents might come to their senses at that point.
Yeah, and it's the whole idea about something for nothing. Actually use it in terms of what is the family benefit here? What is this family getting? And therefore, just as individuals, just drinking off the milk cow the entire time is not acceptable and not sustainable. Yeah. And that's the key.
That's the thing. It's not a choice anymore. We don't have the money, full stop.
So one of the key issues you have to have, which is where the Chancellor went wrong day one on her last budget, was if you put a tax on jobs, funny enough, you get less jobs. Reverse that process, give people confidence to actually think that actually I can employ these people. Yeah. You get tax benefits for companies to be investing, enterprise investment schemes and things like that, which cost the government nothing. Yeah. Nothing at all.
But it does make a difference. But that's a failure to understand how business works, because they've not run small businesses. Can I ask you just finally, because one of the stories that's around at the moment is about what's going to happen in the budget and hints at and the failure to sort of completely poo-poo away these ideas. Not a rise in the rate of VAT, because that would be a direct breach, wouldn't it, of the manifesto pledges, but rinky-dinking it around in the same way they do with the national insurance rise for employers by putting VAT, spreading it further. So putting it, for instance, on private healthcare. Some talk about putting it on financial services as well. What would that do?
Right, what you have to do is, fundamentally, we have the wrong tax system, but you don't...
Hello? Well, we've lost you. I think the cat got involved. We lost you for a moment there. Oh, darn, I'm so sorry. Oh, my goodness. I was just going to find out what was going to happen there. Tom Slater, you'll have to step into the breach. No. I mean, have you got a cat?
I haven't got a cat, unfortunately. No pet that I can brandish to try and fill
Ian Collins is here. You could stroke him while you're talking.
I could, but he didn't like it last time I did it. And
fair enough.
HR had to get involved.
The magistrate was very, very forthright when he said something.
Sorry, carry on.
No, not at all. I have apologised. I thought we could move on, but people keep bringing it up.
Apparently not.
But no, it's an intractable problem, isn't it? The work-shy youths, and it's one of those things where I think there just needs to be a credible plan to deal with it, because obviously no one wants to look mean-spirited to people.
Why not? Why is everyone so worried about? I just find it's like these parents who don't say no to their children because, oh, I want to be nice, I want to be their best friend. It's your job to bring up functioning adults who can contribute to society.
I don't know who they think it looks mean-spirited to as well. Yeah. Is it just to the newspapers they read and the opinion columns there and people who happen to be on BBC Radio 4 Today programme this morning? Is that really what they think public opinion is on this issue?
Yeah, that really is. That's why they're so out of touch, aren't they? As I mentioned, not being stroked at the current time, Mr. Ian Collins.
It's a bit of breaking news just came in. An economist was eaten by his own cat on live TV.